this time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome back to another Saturday night sci-fi shadow chat. I knew I was going to mess that up. Such a long title. I got to thank Baron for that, and I've got to thank Rick from 28mm RPG for the intro. He wrote that for us a while back. I just love it. He is a phenomenal painter, game master, and obviously musician. So how's everybody doing tonight? To my left, right, first time on the show, we've got Elfbait. How you doing?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Next to him, we've got Kevin DeJordy. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Much better than last week. Thank you.
Glad to hear it. Down below, right underneath me, we've got Bo from Bo Paints Minis. How you doing, man? Last night was fun. Let's keep that up. I'm already looking forward to next week's game. Next to him, we've got Fake People. How you doing, buddy?
I have put down the suicide pills. I'm not going to put them in your coffee for another 4 weeks.
Yeah, you hear that, guys? 4 more weeks.
He
I don't know. How do you trust a guy in a straw boater?
You should see the one he got today. He got himself another hat for the collection. He didn't want to go shopping with us. Wasn't, feeling 100%, but we made it all worthwhile, right, buddy?
No.
Okay.
Well, if we're going to talk funny hats.
Oh, okay. Jack, show him what you got. Show him what you got. Hurry.
I'm waiting for him to pull out the cane, so he can twirl it around and dance a little bit.
You know what? You're the second person today to say the same thing. Oh my God, this day has been so. I don't know what's the word, Bo.
There we go. That's a good one.
Quantum.
Thank you. Check it out.
Nice. Oh.
Owen, you got a hat to show us?
No, I left my hard hat in the car.
All right. Well,
Is
welcome
that the
to
one
the
that
show,
looks like
Owen.
a 10-gallon?
Yep. Hey, it's a hard hat. I can wear it on site.
All right.
That's the only thing
We're gonna have to make a hat show. Next week, baby. Funny hats for your favorite live stream.
I already played my hand. That's all I got.
No
1889 for Eli there. That's what he should be playing. For the old.
If there wasn't a sleeping person in between me and the thing, I'd have one of the big Viking helmets with the natural horns and stuff.
I gotta get one of those. Oh, you know what? Just for the.
I was pricing nasal helms the other day, and nice replicas are pretty affordable, actually.
That's cool.
Can you see those up there?
Oh, that's nice. You got a Centurion.
Yes. Yeah.
And and then what is that? Is that French? I'm trying to think.
Looks like some sort of a bear skin.
Yeah.
No.
They're both Roman helmets, I guess. The one's kind of like Magneto's with the.
One of them is.
Right, and we picked those up at the gun show way back a couple months ago, but we got a sweet deal on them. Unfortunately, the little guy's helmet, it's got screws inside. It's got literally no padding, so we've got to fix that before he can wear it. But we got a sweet deal on those. In the chat tonight, we've got Mage's Musings. Gonna have to have you back on soon. Echo, or is this your first time tonight? Hey, how you doing? Of course, we've got Bo and Kevin in the chat. Who else do we have here tonight?
Got Hunger.
Hungar, glad to see you, buddy. I'd like to see you out of the freaking hospital, but just get better, man. We're all praying and rooting for you. Our friend Multi Gunman is here tonight. James L., how the heck are you doing? I'm looking forward to talking to you. Maybe in person later tonight. Want to see how you're doing. And who else do we have here tonight? I think that's it. We've got 8 eyeballs looking at us right now. As you guys remember, last week we were talking about tips for new GMs, and I don't mean to pile on Bo, but we're gonna. I suckered you in here tonight just so we could. No, I just wanted to actually give you, a lot of encouragement because you seem to not realize how good you are at all this. Omen and I can attest to that. You've got everything it takes to be a great GM, and hearing it a couple more times might put you over the top and swell your head. But it's a risk I'm willing to take, at least to get to play some good old fashioned sci-fi gaming. Oh, and little guy bailed on us without even so much as a by your leave. Well,
Kids
that's
these
kids
days.
for you these days.
Yeah, yeah. He's just got to play downstairs.
No.
Yeah,
The hat stopped the waves from coming in, and so now he can't stay.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I wore my sun helmet out to the 4th of July parade last
He's
back in summer, and I was at my brother's subdivision. All these uptight kind of yuppie types are all looking at me like, "Who's the weirdo with the hat?" I'm like,
and Bo, I mean, like, you really hit us, like, just in the little bit that we got to talk to you last episode. You're already hitting me with like theater terms and that kind of stuff. So really, I mean, in the world of role playing, like, if you have any exposure to theater, it's a little bit of a help, I think. Maybe you don't want to get like if you're got a PhD in it, it's probably not great. But if you just have the understanding of kind of like, how do two characters talk to each other? Like, how do you stage people, kind of positionally? Like, you kind of understand some of that stuff when it comes to theater. So that's very helpful.
"Bo, you're not coming across. No audio."
Oh, we can't hear you.
Mm-hmm. You are not muted, but we cannot hear you.
Might just be in the
All right, pantomime.
microphone setting.
Could be in his settings. I had a problem with that before too. The StreamYards was looking for my webcam audio instead of my headset audio.
Yeah, it'll do that sometimes. Yeah, I still can't hear you.
Maybe check your settings and go to audio. The settings on.
Sorry,
and he popped out. I know he can hear us.
We'll pick on him when he figures it out.
Right.
Boy.
So I was working on this last week and I didn't get to it, which is fine. I almost wanted to make a little short on it, but I came up with a couple of things. I don't want to call them 10 commandments or anything like that, but a couple of really basic sort of mantras for being a good GM. Know yourself. Know the game, know your players, know what you want to accomplish, and I think there's one more, but it's eluding me right now. I did actually take notes somewhere, but
I would add to that. It's never as bad as you think it is.
Yeah. And Owen said something the other day.
I think I heard Bo. But go ahead. Maybe.
Bo, go ahead and say something so we can check you out.
Yeah, it's still the same. Okay, never mind. I thought I heard. Oh, it might have been Mr. Fake Man over there. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I wanted to, go over each one maybe a little. Knowing yourself, Bo, we know you've got what it takes. You want to be the game master and run a game. I always say run the game you've always wanted to play in. Whether regardless of genre, just start with that. What kind of game do you want to run? And if your players don't enjoy it or don't dig it or are not following along, like the famous movie, Build It and They Will Come. So, L-Fate, what would you say to this? Anything to add or
To just know yourself.
yeah.
Yeah, it takes a bit. Also, I mean, you're that is a process. I mean, who you start out as is not who you're going to end up as. I mean, I've been doing this for 40 plus years now, and I started when I was 8. You can only imagine just how wrong and deluded I was at age 8.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not wrong. I say wrong with big air quotes.
Mm-hmm.
We played D&D wrong. I thought it was all about kind of movie of the week kind of stupidity, but you'll develop a style.
Howdy, Shawner. Yes, in fact, I do.
Yes. I thought that was just the acid leaking from the basement.
It
No,
reminds
it's
me of
just-
the old
it's
Romulan displays from the old school
there you
Star
go.
Trek.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I've been doing this just as a goof to see if anybody notices, and I'm gonna spring it on our friends over at Nathan Allen's channel because they're a bunch of cool weirdos who talk about ghosts and paranormal and psychic phenomenon and UFOs and Bigfoot and all that stuff. So I'm gonna hit them with this, and they're just gonna freak. You know what I mean?
And you know,
Oh my God.
So the pre-show is all the uncool,
No.
I'm just teasing you. I'm just teasing you on the whole thing.
no, actually, what it made me. Oh, good.
No, it's just they're cool guys who deal with the other stuff. One of my other passions, which is all the weird stuff that goes on in the world. Freaking Omen.
It made me think of kind of like a holographic display, right? It's like you're mostly there, and then there's just a little bit of those kind of like artifacts, like holographic artifacts, and that would be a cool little that's
Not
a
bad,
simple.
not bad for $1.25 at the Dollar Tree, right?
Hey,
It's a
that's like
simple-
$10,000 worth of special effects in 1960.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like simple what is it? Just film. I mean, this is kind of film, but yeah, just little things like that. Those are the things that are the real creativity.
Okay,
you just take something that's $1 or something, turning it.
I'm
Something
gonna
cool.
I'm gonna say something here because you're all mentioning this. How cool were the backgrounds in Flash Gordon from the movie 1981 with the whole, in the backdrops with all of the weird clouds and everything. So I just had to mention that. So
No. Absolutely love it.
I love that stuff. I'm going, why don't we see that nowadays? Sometimes the old movies just seem so much cooler, even though you can tell that they're as cheesy as hell.
I think
You're muted, Shadow.
Oh, good. Oh, Shadow, were you muted? Yeah, you're muted, Shadow. But what I was just real quick is just like practical effects, even very simple practical effects. I mean, I think it's just lost art for a lot of people unless people really go out of their way to learn that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I remember making a monster to fight a really bad Godzilla in high school out of a Jello mold.
Yeah. There you go.
Using gravity to make it look like the Jello was stretching out pseudopods because we just set it on the hot concrete and it would start to melt towards Godzilla.
There you go. Yeah, like forced perspective kind of stuff and
Yep.
all that kind of stuff.
Sticking the nozzle from a can of WD-40 out his nose and igniting it.
And yet somehow we all made it out of childhood.
That was in my school video productions class.
Right.
So, on school grounds.
I remember the teachers asking to borrow my knife when I was in school, and nowadays they all freak out
Yep.
for a Swiss Army knife.
Yep.
Like, what
Yeah.
the hell?
I
It's a
remember
Swiss
some
Army knife.
badass senior dude coming into metal shop and forging a sword and making a suit of plate mail.
Hell yeah.
That's pretty badass.
Well,
Not gonna lie.
especially considering he was coming into the 8th grade metal shop. He was like him and the teacher were. It's like in there. We had a foundry and everything in that shop. So that's cool.
That's cool.
Totally off subject. Has nothing to do with DMing.
Well,
We were actually allowed to make crossbows in wood shop when I was in middle school.
Yeah.
The most
You imagine
hilarious thing was we had a required project in our wood shop, which was to make a boomerang. And now imagine a class of like 24 to 30 kids out on the school field testing the homemade boomerangs.
Hell yeah.
That would be pretty epic.
It was frightening.
Well,
Yeah.
all I'm thinking of is if anyone remembers was what was it, the Road Warrior, where the guy's hand gets cut off.
Oh yeah. I'm just thinking something else. But Bo, you got your audio worked out or
No.
no?
Mm-mm.
No.
But really, just real quick. Oh, good.
I was going to say you checked with your settings in StreamYard, right? And you've tried coming in and out to see if that'll work. You want to try maybe a different device? Oop.
Yeah,
And
that's probably
the
what
little
he's gonna
guy,
have to do.
yeah, the little guy let me know he's popping out also. So I'm going to put the link in here in case somebody wants to join us, because I know, like I said, Jackie's going to bounce.
I hope he feels better.
Yeah, he just wanted to say hi to everybody, and wish you guys all a happy weekend. So where were we? Knowing yourself, Omen.
So,
Anything to add to that?
we're all talking about that, but the biggest thing is enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is contagious. If you're enthusiastic about running a game and going through it, even if it flops, people will at least have more fun than if you're just like, well, I like to try this. And no, you bring that full bore enthusiasm. Yeah, let's go do this. And that's the great thing about kids is they'll go full bore, and you're going, well, normally I find this boring, but it's so exciting, watching them get excited about stuff that even you may not be. But
For sure.
that's one of the biggest ones. The other one is, don't put so much stress on it. Like I said, all players for the most part want to play. Unless you're really trying to force them. But most of us, especially we get old, we want to play, and we're willing to forgive things. And if okay, if we'll run it, and if we don't like it, then we'll okay, I'll bow out. But I think the hardest part is don't be afraid, and don't be afraid to mess up. You're going to mess up left and right. Just be fearless. That's the big thing. Be fearless and go anyone in there.
I like that fearless. There's, really, what is there to be afraid of? I'm glad you brought that up. But what's the worst that can happen? You look goofy for a minute or two. Have you seen me lately? Come on. We're supposed to be having fun and hanging out with our friends, whether it's online or in person, or even a bunch of new people that you put an ad up somewhere and you try to get people to join your game. If you can make fun of yourself, the world's pretty much your oyster these days. I'm not going to get political, but
Well, I think the other part is, if you really want people to also play, is not only enthusiasm, just make it so easy for them. This was have pre-generated characters, have them go in, have them kick ass, let them be, the big thing in there. Figure out what the players want to do. And after that, let them come back to be kind of heroes and like, okay, now we'll start on a campaign if everyone enjoys it.
Yeah, and start out short and sweet too. Don't try to jump into something epic. Do really simple plots that are, just little fetch quests, showdowns, milk runs, things like that can be done in a night. And then you get your
whatever,
Yeah, you get it done. If you're playing something like a Star Trek game, you touch down on a planet, you meet some weird plants, and you go back up to the ship and you're on to the next planet. You can finish it up real quick. Cyberpunk, you have to do that delivery. Star Wars, collect the bounty. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then it doesn't, and the other thing I'd like to say is keep it somewhat confined in a small area.
Oh yeah.
A perfect example is if you're going to play horror for sci-fi like Alien. It's on one ship, you're trapped there, that's all you're going to do. You don't want to don't try the sandbox first off if it's not going to be a campaign. It's just keep it small and short, and it limits players' decisions, and then they focus on the task at hand.
Yeah, and little one shots, two shots, whatever you want to call them, can always turn into big campaigns anyways.
Yep.
Yeah.
Once everybody's digging their character. Not to mention, if you play those short games to start with, if somebody's just not loving their character, it's no big deal to swap it out. It's like, all right, I clearly have no idea what an Esper is, and I don't know how to play psychic powers. Can I play a cyborg?
Well, and I think that there's that, like I said, is pre-gens, hand out, make them so they don't even really have to think that much. I know that Eli and I go back and forth over some things, but here are your basic actions. Here's everything you can do. Don't feel limited by it. This is how the basic rules work. Here's your character. Maybe ask them a little bit beforehand what they kind of like, but make 6 or 8 characters and say, okay, guys, you pick what you want. Do that and say, okay, we're gonna bring you right in. Boom. All right.
I've got a cinematic aliens scenario that I made about 10 different pre-gens for a game that I expect to have maybe 4 people. That way, people can look at a bunch of different things, and I try to make different permutations of the same thing. Like, I've got a security officer and a colonial marine. They're both fighty characters, but they have different motivations, and
I'm going to say one other thing too, is if you can figure out a strong IP to tie it to, it's a lot easier. A perfect example is if you say you want to play hard and you have Alien. That's a lot easier than saying, hey, I'm going to do Mothership, which no one knows about.
Even if you're just going to say it's like Alien.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like Alien, but in this case, our monster is something different. But
it's like Star Wars. It's like Firefly. It's like Serenity.
Exactly.
All those things will help. Snapshot. Okay.
I have a strict 2- rule. If you give me a description of anything that has more than 2 hyphens in it, I'm not interested. Like, don't come to me and tell me I got my Illuminati, Cyberpunk, Marvel superheroes, D&D hash up. I'm like, no, I'm gone.
Well, perfect example is what Eli said. Is you don't even have to say that. It's called Shadowrun, and you're done.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to welcome Mage's Musings to
Hello,
the
guys.
show since the little guy jumped out. And Bo, if you're not going to come back, let me know. Not that I want to put somebody else in. I want to know at least that you're in the chat or listening, hanging out one way or the other, so we can kind of poke fun. Help you out with your upcoming GURPS game.
And really, like, what I would add to your list is kind of know what you don't know. If you have, like, as the game master, if you're playing something that's kind of in a genre or it's something outside of a modern setting, like, learn more about that, either like that historical setting, or do some fictional reading, or watch some shows or something like that have to do with, if it's future, if it's like sci-fi, and in that direction, and just kind of get the feel of this is kind of part of know your players, but it's like kind of get the feel of what they might expect, and then, because you want to have some things that they're comfortable with and know, and then you want to have some anomalies or some things on top of that they don't really know, and maybe a little bit more than they do, and that's a way to bring in just that one step ahead mentality that I like to do, which is like you don't have to be a million steps ahead of your players. You just have to be a couple of steps ahead.
Exactly. Going too far ahead. I've got a friend. Well, you guys know Jade. He's got tens of thousands of reams of paper on a particular world, and I'm like, that's great, but get people to the table and put it to the test, because nothing helps you build your world more than actual people at the table investing in and inhabiting your world.
Yep. Yeah, the way that go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, a way I put it very succinctly is like, you don't want them to be playing in your world. You want your world to be a base, and then when you start playing with them, it's your world, like as in our world, like all the people that are doing it. If it's just your world, then people will get bored of it very quickly.
Right.
Pretty
and you'd be better off writing a novel, in which case
if you're
which I
gonna
also
like, yeah,
highly recommend. Every
yes,
one of us here should be, secretly working on our next great American novel.
right.
Even if it's just a booklet.
I'm more of a
But
short story kind of guy.
What nationality?
Yeah.
The Great Canadian Novel, in my case. Thank you very much.
North
Oh,
American.
right.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
North
Well,
American.
I've never heard of it written. I mean, I've never heard of it expressed any other way than the great American novel. But
Right.
absolutely, John, what would you say to add to the knowing yourself idea? Is there
Knowing
anything?
yourself. Well, can you ever know yourself? I guess there's the question. I mean, philosophers have been asking that one for millennia. Yeah, you know your strengths. If you're starting out as a DM, know your strengths. Like how many DMs try to do everything?
Right.
They want to be Matt Mercer. They want to be Critical Role. It's like no. Figure out what you're good at. Start there. Build the other skills. But
The hard thing for people to realize is that, I mean, at the beginning, I think we talked about this before, but at the beginning, it seemed pretty genuine. But then, like after like a couple of seasons, it seemed much more produced and was more like a TV show than actually playing the game. And that's kind of where that's where most people watch, because it's like exponential, the people that come in to watch, right?
right,
So
and they're
they
seeing
don't,
the scripted content, not the game
Right.
content. Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
it's like they're expecting RPGs to be one way, and you can't really deliver on that because you can never deliver on that, and it's sad.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah.
Seth Sprokowski did a great video on that though, and it's been around since before Critical Role. He did like Jeff, the greatest dungeon master alive, and we all knew that guy. Your friend comes back from college and he's like, yeah, I've been playing with this group of theater majors and English majors, and it's just this amazing sweeping campaign. I'm like, dude, I like stuff.
I like swords and armor.
Right.
I got this great expanded universe for Hawk the Slayer ready to run as a campaign. You want to go?
Well, I'm gonna. Now I know Sean's blessed with this, and that you have a lot of actors in your games.
I have a few, yeah.
But that's the other part people forget is it's not just Matt Mercer. You now have 7 character actors and voice actors that are all doing it.
Mhm.
But you're right at the very beginning. The other part is as they got bigger, they got more and more. How do I want to put this?
Right.
Sponsors. And so now you start seeing more miniatures, you start seeing all of the stuff that's going out. And one is, unless you have a lot of independent wealth and time, you're not going to collect that yourself. And the other part is Critical Role has 80 or 90 people that they have to support. It's something huge that people don't realize.
Yeah, when you have production assistants to help build
Yeah.
your terrain, it goes a little further. Although I will say this, like a little bit of anecdote from my own life. You don't have to be Jeff or Matt Mercer. My own kids wouldn't play games with me, even though they played games. And I asked my oldest once, I'm like, why don't you want to play D&D with me? And he's like, I grew up hearing about how much of an awesome DM you are from all these people you played with, and it was just intimidating. So I ended up being his Jeff, the greatest dungeon master of all
That,
Yeah.
Living the dream, my friend. Living the dream.
Yeah, well, I married a gamer. We had gamer kids.
Again, living the dream. You lucky bastard.
She's been playing D&D since 2nd edition in high school.
I noticed we both, you and I, have like almost the exact number of years playing. I've got about 43, 44 years now. But I do believe I'm a little older than you. And you said you got started playing at 8. I'm like, I didn't even know it existed when I was that.
I
that
discovered
young,
D&D by accident. Like I literally had moved out of a neighborhood between 2nd and 3rd grade, and happened to be back in the old neighborhood, and was visiting a friend of mine, and he's like, I got this cool thing. He pulls out this box with a dragon on it, and we sat there and we played it completely wrong. We made up characters, and then we just opened up the map like a board game and went from room to room, and then would read the description and then fight through it. I came home so jazzed. And talk about starting out and doing everything wrong. I was so hyped for D&D. I tried to rewrite it from memory from a bad, sketchy experience playing it for like 2-3 hours, and then wrote up an adventure, drew the map with my Crayola markers, did a piece of lore for a bard song set to the tune of Greensleeves, and convinced my mom and my stepdad to sit down and be my first 2 players.
Wow.
Well, and you talk about that, Eli. That was exactly my same experience with the kid across from the hall from me. He got it. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Oh, you mean get this? And then I remember, carrying all my books and stuff. And like, oh wow, I'll get everything I can get. And they were then there were the teenagers that played. And like, you're all playing it wrong.
Well, and that's the thing.
We don't care.
The only reason I knew it existed is because my friend at the bus stop, Kevin, who's like 2 years older than me, carried around his AD&D stuff. And I'm like, that looks cool. He's got a demon on the cover of that book. And then of course, after I played, I like hooked up with Kevin at the bus stop talking to him. I'm like, hey man, what's going on? What is this? Is that D&D? Yeah, that's D&D. And next thing you know, me, Kevin, his cousin, his older brother, the guys from the neighborhood across the way, we're all playing in kind of co-campaigning. There's like 2 or 3. I mean, it just get out there and do it. I mean, honestly, no matter how dumb it seems when you're starting.
I'm going to bring up the other thing because you just mentioned the box set. Go pick up one of the box sets that are out there for the starters, and that's all. It doesn't matter. I mean,
I'm glad they're doing those again.
Well, I mean, Star Frontiers to me was the best for that aspect. It had everything you need with a little punch cut. You punched them out. It had all of this, and I went, that's a great way of getting people in. And I've showed the Alien one, very similar. Hey, look, we've got some character sheets. You get to see kind of the picture of them. It's got the stats in the back. You go through it. It's not too hard. Then you got the big map. There's something to be said for the tactile experience. And even my ex, who makes fun of me for playing D&D, when I got all of my big, dice things, she could not avoid stop rolling them. It's one of these things that dice are addictive.
I just turned that addiction to miniatures.
And it's funny.
Everybody knows I've got 20 dice in my collection, but I've got 20,000 miniatures.
Yeah.
Teeny miniatures.
Dang. Yeah.
I don't know if talk about 15 mil one of these nights.
Oh, those are fleet scale mecha.
I don't know if Mage is. It seems like you guys are more in the same age bracket than I am of you guys. I've only been DMing for 20 years, so I'm kind of the novice.
Only 20.
Yeah. And,
I'm going to bring this up, and this is something I think these new players are going to have to understand for 5th edition. Is, you know what? There's going to be another edition coming out. It may be better, it may be worse for whatever game you're playing, but everyone goes through that. It's going to split your group up, and you just have to understand that. And some of them will refuse to move forward. Some of them will refuse to move, stay in the old one. At the end of the day, you're looking for an excuse to spend time with your friends. And the more pleasant of an experience you make it for your friends, the more that they'll want to be with it. This is why, Eli's joked about it, and O'Connell has. Hey, look, I'm doing barbecue. Oh, we'll be over at your house. Look, if you're making good food, especially a barbecue, people will come.
Oh yeah, we used to do potlucks when we were gaming in person back when I was still back in Washington. But
people like getting together in real space. It's crazy. And I used to kind of like what would I say, discount that, but now that I've kind of lived with it for a while, there's definitely something about sitting at a table with other people. And the only thing I wanted to mention was the reason that I bring the age difference up is because my first kind of real like getting into role playing experience was I actually was on Yahoo, and I was really into the video game IPs because I had grown up with Nintendo, and those are the kind of games that I played mostly, and there really wasn't a whole lot of like the role playing board game kind of stuff going on. So, but I was like, look. It's like I'm really interested in these things, and I was interested in creative writing and that kind of stuff. So it was like, I just had the idea. It's like, wouldn't it be cool to kind of like imagine some stuff with other people? So I actually found a message board where people were playing a Mega Man RPG over IRC. And it was just like, it's just a chat room. You're just in there. You make your little character, and it's like
I'm hip to your jive. I'm old enough.
Yeah, but but that was my first experience, and I was like, that was so fun. But like there's got to be more to this. Like it seems like people have been doing this for a long time. So this is a little bit after Wizards of the Coast got D&D, and like third edition had been out for a little while. And so I just, yeah, I was kind of like, I wouldn't say it's by accident, but it was like interest had to kind of, I had to kind of go circularly into figuring out what RPGs were. And then when I did, read the books cover to cover, all three of them. Well, I mean, Monster Manual, you kind of, you flip a little bit more because it's, once you know what a monster is, then, you're kind of just looking at abilities or whatever. And yeah, I just got the Chess X dice and the little mat, with the miniatures, because third edition, had the, that's kind of where you started. And with the box set and starter set, I actually was playing the starter set before I did that. It was just kind of like all piled on. It was like, well, I'm gonna get the starter set to see if I want to, like get the bigger thing, and I definitely did. But that was the best way to do it, was to get the starter box first and just
Yep,
get some
I
reps in.
absolutely agree.
Like
There's,
just
that's why I was
get
showing
some reps in.
the snapshot now. Well, I know it's not really a role playing game. It's kind of like a introductory to Traveler, but this is
Right.
actually what I got before I got Traveler, and I'm like, this is it had, like you said, the alien and the different scenarios with all within the confines of a 100-ton scout ship, and I was just
Mhm.
like, oh, this is my jam. I'd been playing D&D for, a while, but I'm like, I grew up more in the sci-fi genre than the actual fantasy. My dad was a gun nut and a sci-fi nut. Well, not really a nut per se, but he had turned me on to Soylent Green, Silent Running, Rollerball, Logan's Run, and
Oh
all this
yeah.
other stuff. All the classics. Real quick, I wanted to bring up Multi's chat here because it's been here for a while. When my current electrician construction job is done, I've got a beginner's D&D game lined up at a gaming store. It'll be my first game. I'm getting pretty excited. This is exactly, you and Bo are exactly the people we're trying to reach out to tonight and last week, obviously. And I know you were here last night, Multi. With all the things that went on, I don't want to even talk about it, but it's the perfect opportunity for people. It's a brand new year. I know it's a little cliche, but this is the perfect opportunity for so many people to jump into something brand new and step outside of your comfort zone, or start a new game, start a new campaign, a one shot, whatever it is. Dip your feet in the water, check it out, see if you like it, and if not, you know unless you're you know got something horrible looming over your head, this is the perfect opportunity to get into some new game, because anybody who's listening to this right now has probably played more than one game,
Yeah.
or at least one gaming session. You know what we're talking about. You know what a role playing game is, and I can't think of a better time than now to do anything. And here we are, and look at the time; it's now.
The other thing I want to bring up is, everyone talks about this stuff. Try to find a few systems that have that make you excited to want to play the game, because there are some great rules out there. But if you're not excited by the artwork, you're not excited by the layout and everything else, that you're just not going to be as enthused as if you were.
Yeah, I've played
taking
some
one for it.
games that I was really jazzed about, and I could care less that the system wasn't even all that great. If you find something that's good,
Yeah.
I've talked about Justifiers to just about anybody who'll listen. Mechanically, it's a little twitchy.
This is
But the
like
concept
one
is awesome.
time. This is kind of like the one time when you can kind of actually judge a book by its cover. Wouldn't you agree? It was the artwork on so many great games, whether it was Star Frontiers, the Player's Handbook. You know, this is like the one time where the artwork dang well better be exactly what you're going to find inside. You
Yeah.
know, so many,
Oh yeah.
novel covers have these ambiguous or even misleading, especially like old comic books. You see the cover and like, oh,
Who
you
remembers
finished
this
it.
issue? The invisible girl is no more. Or invisible girl dies. Yes, because she became the invisible woman.
Well,
Right.
I mean, there are some things out there, but I'll say this just from my personal perspective because I have a lot of different books. The artwork tends to guide which direction that the game's feel will be. A perfect example I use is Cult versus Wicked Ones. It's not that you can't make Wicked Ones that way, but Wicked Ones has this weird cartoonish thing, and so it's kind of meant to be tongue in cheek, and that's the way to run it. Whereas
Cult's going to give you a therapy bill.
Yeah. I mean, it was enough that I looked at the art and said, "This isn't for me." And even when I flipped through the rules, I'm like, "Okay, it's not really for me." That's fun.
Cult is for people who think Call of Cthulhu is too light.
Yeah, it's too happy and friendly. Yes, I mean that's It's like World of Darkness, except that World of Darkness was had too many rainbows.
It's World of much more darkness.
Yes,
Advanced darkness, as SpongeBob likes to say, right?
It's a world of depression.
Speaking of dark, there's a game my friend Connell just sent me by Free League, I believe, called Death in Space. It really doesn't get any darker than that, nor is I want to use the word retarded, but I'm not gonna. The beautifully put together book until you actually read the words therein. Don't waste your money. It's just like the worst gaming book I've ever read in my entire life.
Clearly, you've never read Universe.
Universe. Thanks for the warning.
Oh, I picked up Universe because I saw it on, I think, Amazon, and it's about 1,000 pages of nothing. It's got an 11-page character sheet.
Oof. That's the other thing that I mean, when you start looking at things for this, is you want. I'm not trying to knock it, but as much as Legion of Myth talks about, well, it's Tolkien SD&D. Whenever he talks about, okay, could you explain the John Carter Green Martians in the D&D book? Could you explain the laser gun? He was just like,
yeah, there are plenty of monsters in that original monster manual and the Fiend Foley and all of that are clearly not Tolkien. Four-armed, you got like four-armed gorillas. That's John Carter. You've got carnivorous apes. That's Conan and everybody else who wrote in that style.
Tarzan.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whole thing is, or it's Sinbad in the Seven Seas or whatever,
or just classic Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Or Norse mythology or any mythology.
Let's just dump all the inspirations into the blender and see what comes out.
I mean, you got the Kirin right there in the first monster manual, right? And the Chinese dragons,
and the Rakshasa.
Right.
Yes, I remember that passage from Lord of the Rings where the samurai jumps out riding the Kirin and strikes down Morgoth, right?
Yeah. Well, I would go down a tangent, but we're going to get way off the topic of helping new people. But maybe it isn't, actually, if I think about it now. Just when it comes to the public domain, like buy, or what is it? They say beg, borrow, and steal literally all of it, and get the vibe, and then try and imagine on top of that. Be creative on top of the things that work in the human psyche.
There is nothing you've never read, seen, watched that you can't turn into a sci-fi adventure.
Right.
I mean, how many of us haven't heard of someone telling us that I'm running Die Hard, but my players don't know it yet. You know what I mean?
Nice.
You can turn anything into a game. I mean, back in the old days, I had a buddy, a DM named Josh, metalhead guy.
Wasn't
back
Jeff?
in the 80s? No, it was Josh. And Josh decided to run an entire D&D campaign based off of Power Slave, the Iron Maiden album.
Hell yeah!
He took the songs and made them adventures.
A concept RPG out of a concept album.
With Judas Priest, I was running. I want to say either Villains and Vigilantes, and I took everything from Judas Priest songs because I was in a metal band and my friends were, they had no clue, until I think I used like Jawbreaker or something like that as the name of a villain, and they're like, hey, wait a minute.
We had a magic sword in our campaigns for the longest time named Holy Diver.
Holy diaper? What?
Yes, Holy Diaper is a +5 diaper protection, but
is that anything like the +7 loincloth from Might and Magic? Anybody remember that?
Going more extreme on that though, we're talking about taking cool stuff and turning it into sci-fi and like Die Hard and all of that, but I know a guy who runs Star Frontiers, and his entire campaign is an EMT campaign where all of his guys are the emergency guys in one of the spaceports, and
that's kind of cool.
It's sci-fi medical drama set in the Star Frontiers universe.
That's great. So is it like General Hospital or is it like Scrubs?
It's kind of more like the ER Hill Street Blues kind of era kind of stuff.
Okay.
Well, there's doing that because then they get calls and then they basically get called out on whatever adventure he's got ready for them for the week. They don't get a say.
Exactly. And you may be going out to help for a medical call, but when you get there and the drug crazed Azerian is trying to take your head off.
Well, and that's good for one shots. They're really short contained, incidents that you can build upon. Yeah. I'm going to say this much is,
but I mean, Western samurai flicks, anything could be, that's the other thing. I guess what I'm trying to say is like, absolutely, whether it's an episode of the Smurfs don't knock it because there's story in the Smurfs.
Go back and watch some of the Smurfs.
I went back and watched.
Dark.
I watched the entirety of He-Man and took notes one time. I'm like, the best interpretation of a lawful good dragon I've ever seen is in He-Man.
I'm going to bring this up for the other part is go because we are in a gilded age of RPGs, despite what everyone says. Because if you look at, we have 40 years from one to the other. Go grab the quick starters for the games. Go look at them, seeing how they look. You can go to Drive-Thru RPG. A lot of them are free or $1. Go look at it, see if you like it, and if you do, then run with it. And that's probably the great thing nowadays is you don't have to spend $40 or $50 on a starter set. You can just say, okay, I'm going to do this little, well-confined space and go with it. That's like Eli and I were talking about Conan. I said, just pick up the quick starter. Just look at it if you want that and go for it. The what is it, $1 for the Traveler one?
And Shauner's asking us where's the sci-fi. I would like to remind him that Traveler has technology levels from 0 to 20 or something like that. So
pretty sure Captain Kirk beat up a caveman.
Star Frontiers was mentioned.
Yeah. I'd like to take this moment to thank WotC for actually encouraging us all to do what we're doing. If you think about it, they kind of gave us one of the greatest, albeit a late Christmas present, but they really, lit a fire under the keister of many of us to just, what? It is time to do something new. So to everybody at Wizards of the Coast, thank you. You've been too kind.
I'm going to bring up the other part because my normie friend, which I always base everything off of, he's looking for new games to play because they weren't happy with what occurred. And I'm like, even if you love 5e, the idea of trying something out different in a different genre or a different rule set to me is always a positive because you can go, okay, you know what, that's not for me. But that's one of the reasons that I'm like, okay, I'm glad that everyone's gone through it. And, it's just like the rest of us playing first edition or second edition, or Eli and I talk about Star Frontiers, is they're still around. No one can really take those games away. And some of them can actually kind of get bigger now because you have all the stuff on Drive-Thru or a few of these other places.
Well, Star Frontiers even has 2 fan magazines that have been running for years and years and years to the tune of about 50 issues.
Yeah. And I was just mentioning the reason Traveler's a fairly simple system to learn. So is Star Frontiers is a pretty simple system to learn. Those are what go with it. I just wish that they produced more actual physical starter sets because I think at least I didn't get the chits, but I'm sure all of us remember the original Dungeons and Dragons one where they included a crayon and you had to color in each
in the
box.
dice, yeah.
Yes.
Yep. I actually have that box set here.
Yeah,
This is
we
the
got
perfect segue into the next thing is, knowing the game. Talking about these starter sets, these sci-fi starter sets.
I can't read that. Okay, yeah.
That's a red box.
Where's the sci-fi? Yeah, we're getting there, Connor. And if you want to pop in, the link's up there. I can drop it in again. You're always welcome here. I showed off the snapshot starter set. I've actually got my Traveler. I've got a sealed original Traveler starter set, but I've got other, all the books for the original Traveler. I have just about every edition of Traveler except GURPS Traveler, which was, more books in it than all the previous Traveler books combined. Right. So I sort of shied away from that. It's like I've got my even back then when Traveler came out, I was like, you know what? I've still got Traveler. It's not broken. The pages still work. So I'm going to start with you, Sean. What are some tips we can give our friends out there like Multigun, who's getting ready to start his very first game? And believe it or not, another friend of ours who will remain nameless has been drafted, voluntold. He's going to be running a game for a youngster and a few others, and he's never actually run a game. And I'm not sure if he's decided on staying away from science fiction and going fantasy. But, the tips are pretty much the same. I could have put in, for fantasy instead of sci-fi. With a few exceptions, it's pretty much the same game regardless of the genre. But Sean, what would you recommend to our new players when it comes to learning the game? Are there any things other than sleeping with it under your pillow that you would recommend?
Yeah, no, don't sleep with it under your pillow. The book gets wrecked. No, I don't do too much. How many players just want to throw the kitchen sink and try to do everything? I'm a sandbox player, and proponent, but I never say that to a starter. What's going on? Sorry, Shadow, you're muted.
I think he's talking to.
He's talking to somebody else. Okay, I was wondering. Yeah, don't try to do too much. And I like I said, I totally love sandbox play, but I would never tell anybody to start that way. That's big. So get a good tight scenario and keep it small. Just ease your way into the system. You can grow from there. If you want to create a setting, don't create the whole damn setting all at once. Just create where you're starting and figure it out.
Honestly, I've recommended to people to hex crawl it. Like if you're gonna, I mean, like however you would do that, but like if you're gonna leave that little area that you've made, have some idea of what the next hex over is, but you only need to know what the next hex over is because in most games you're not like passing over a hex. Even if you pass over it, you're flying or something like that, you still got to go buy it. So
do you mean like in a Traveler sci-fi sort of thing? Yeah. Yeah, one hex is pretty damn big. I mean,
in Traveler, it's enormous.
3.25.
Whichever you're doing, you just have the information tight and know what it is. It's easier for you to know and understand and be very familiar with a smaller amount of information at the beginning than trying to remember everything, trying to remember the beats of a whole world.
I know the first Star Wars game I ever ran outside of my local friend group back in the old D6 when it came out was at school, and it was a super narrow focus. You had to get a guy out of an Imperial prison on a planet. And and then so we had them land and I had the players figured out. It's a very narrow focus. You have a prison, you have a guy you got to get out of the prison for reasons, and then you got to get off the planet. And it was a riot. We had so much fun. And that's another thing, is like, don't feel like you have to put so many beats in there. This is pretty much all a fight, all a sneak and a fight. And we didn't have the role playing was just banter between players. It's easy to get yourself too focused on trying to hit everything. Oh, I got to put exploration in there, and I got to put role playing and puzzles, and no. Sometimes it's just about beating up stormtroopers while the Wookiee spends his force point to hold the blast door open.
Yeah, I mean, I think Now, maybe there's something better. I think that looking back on it, the original adventure for Star Frontiers was one of the best ones out there.
Except the beginning.
Well, you know what? I didn't like it when they had to go fight the pirates to get onto the world. But once you're there, you've got a hex crawl, you've got a dungeon effectively, you've got a big fight at the end for that, and then it starts out for a whole world spanning aspect. When you start looking at the later modules in there, where you have to get all the different races together to go fight off the invading space worms. So the other part is, I don't think enough people talk about this, but the preparation. Bring enough dice for everyone. If you have them, I'm not saying everyone has to do it, but I mentioned mostly.
I know what you mean, though. Functionally have stuff available for people.
Well, no one likes sharing across. You want to make it as pleasant of an experience as possible, especially for new players, because that will determine on how they do it. Now, we all talked about everything being awesome, and we didn't have anything before, and oh my God, there's a 20-sided die. I didn't even know there was anything besides a 6 when I was, little.
Right.
And that sounds great when you're all willing to share it, but the novelty's kind of worn off on all this stuff, and players don't want to fight with it. If you have the ability, and I'm not saying everyone does, but if you do have the ability, and dice are pretty cheap now for like $20, you can get 14 different sets or something for some of them.
Yeah.
Right. Even Walmart,
dice.
Walmart is selling. Right now, Walmart has a 3-pack of dice, I think, for $10, and they look like pretty decent dice.
They're in the
I mean,
dollar
3
store
sets,
now.
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I was going to say
$1
that. If you can find them, I found one set once, and I haven't seen them since. If I had, I literally would have bought them all anyway.
Amazon has a lot of good ones. I just got a set recently. I actually got this is my 5th edition little deal, and but the dice in it, I got all of these, and they were sets. It was like 10 sets of dice, and they
I think it's
dice
like
themselves
$20.
were like, it was it was a little north of 20, and then you literally have enough dice for about the largest game that anybody would want to run.
Beyond dice, go buy a cheap bag of 0.7 millimeter mechanical pencils, and
Sorry, one little super duper tip. These are little inch, they're tags, wooden tags.
Mm-hmm.
They have it to where you can put marker on these and make them into whatever you want, and then you have I got 100 of them for $3. That if you do anything where maybe you're not on a grid or something like that, but you just need a little bit of something to give spatial relativity at the table. You got it.
Yeah. I'm going to bring another thing, because Sean does this, and I always try shilling for it with his Order the Stick minis that he uses. Those are cheap, they're kind of cute, and they're really easy to do. And if they get destroyed, no one really cares. You're not screaming. You just reprint. Yeah. But just those little chits make it just so nice, for things. And I also talk about the other ones I like the little skinny minis that they have. They just don't have them in the sci-fi aspect. But those are great. You put them up. They're not a huge deal. It's like, oh, where's my character? 1 second. I'm going to take some scissors. We cut them out. You fold them up. Boom, you're done. Let's go.
Yeah, I haven't seen these multi, but I did have I think it was a D100 that was basically almost perfectly round.
Was that the one with
son,
the beads in it, the weighted beads in it that would sound like a salt shaker?
It was like a circle ball with another ball inside it. It was just my son. If he can get the dice on the table when he rolls, it's a success. So I would actually recommend something like a dice tray. Something that works kind of good are these little containers they sell around the holidays. For brownies and stuff that you give to other people. Just some sort of. It doesn't even have to be perfectly flat at the bottom. Just something to roll the dice in, so that you don't have that problem. Some sort of dice tray or whatever you want to call it.
It's called a box. You just get a box top with what we used to do with the old
yeah.
D&D and say, hey, look,
Yeah, a shoebox will work great. You know, or
if
even
it
the
bounces
box
out, it doesn't
of a
count.
game.
So
Yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't even think of that. But because I was trying to make like a really fancy dice tray, and I'm gonna get to that craft eventually on the channel, but I just couldn't find one of these freaking bowls. But don't forget the graph paper. Don't forget the snacks, and I know you're new to this, but DM bribes are still a thing. You bring your DM's favorite snack, or if your player brings your favorite snack, don't forget. They didn't have to do that. Maybe a bit of apple polishing, but you know what? In the old days, we had this thing. You never come to somebody's house empty-handed. And you could just because if you start if one player starts doing it, then the rest of the players will start doing it, and you'll find out that your significant other will appreciate it as well.
More than snacks, if you really want to ingratiate yourself to the whoever's hosting the game, be the guy who starts to help clean up after session.
Ooh, good one. Good one.
So many people get done and just ditch out. Even when I used to host, I mean, there would be we'd kind of have this long, extended goodbye, but at the end of the day, at the end of the night, it was my wife and I having to clean up. So
I'm going to bring up the other part though, is, we're talking about different systems in certain cases, is if you don't want to spend extra for the dice, because most people have board games around, just get systems that use D6s. Traveler is really good for that. There are a few others, the Star Wars one. D6s are everywhere. People love to roll them. They're all familiar with. There's nothing special about trying to read. How many times have we go, well, how am I supposed to read a 4-sided die?
You learn fast enough.
And the orbit dice that you
dice in a treasure box.
Yeah, orbit dice that you were talking about. I mean, they look cool, but the one set of them is almost like $150.
Yeah, that's a little out of my price range.
Has anybody seen those? I think they're Xenon. Baron showed me. I think it was Baron. They're dice that actually light up.
Those are cool. That's cool.
Yeah, and then you can program the pattern.
I don't know.
They have dice that'll actually light up when you when you roll a 20 on the D20 too. So it accentuates the crit.
I've got one of those, but I think Shadow's talking about ones that you can actually program. You can program the pattern of the light. They're an LED on the inside. They're like something like $500.
Future.
Oh no! They weren't that expensive. I think it was like $40 or $50 for the set. It's a Kickstarter. I'll try and get to that.
So
if you insist on using metal dice, get a dice tray, because nothing's gonna piss somebody more off more is if you scratch their nice table, or in the case of what my friend did, put a big old chip in his friend's glass tabletop with his steel dice.
Well, first off, I'm going to say this much: is if it's new and these players have never done it before, you don't have to worry about it as much because they're probably using whatever you have. So
I don't know. A lot of people go out and get all jazzed up and buy the top tier dice.
Yeah, as soon as they find out there's accessories for this game,
you'd be surprised. Mammoth tusk dice.
Especially in our age, I've seen some people
come to the table.
Size? Armed for bear, whatever it is, they're go big or go home kind of idea. Do we have any other tips for studying the game?
Go play it. Go online and go play the game you want to run, just so you are familiar with it.
That's a good option now.
It's just
it is.
I mean, before you get with the players and everyone else, go. There's enough online. There are plenty of servers that go through it, and just run with them. See on how they do it. Sometimes you may go, well, I don't like this group. I may not, but there are plenty of one shots out there to do it with. Say, hey, I'm going to mention Cypher because they have a really good one where the guy runs all sorts of weird stuff, including one that was like a sock hop with aliens that come down and you have to fight them off. I played that along with
I love that whole idea, Omen. I was just going through Total Party Skills, Vintage Future RPG, and he's got a ton of of really, rules light. I mean, literally, not quite one-page rules, but the
Easy.
the simplest role-playing game rules you can possibly find that I've come across so far. I picked up his other book. It'll be here tomorrow. That's the whole, his version of basically like GURPS, where it's all the rules, and for using it for multiple systems.
Mhm.
But there's something to be said about literally though studying the book. When we were kids, think about how many times you read the equivalent of the Player's Handbook or the DMG, over and over and over again. People don't do that anymore. They read
Because-
I
something
never
and they
did.
toss it.
I'm horrible.
You know what? I didn't either. I only read the little bit that I was interested in, and what would ever give me a more powerful
I have
character.
never read a game rule book cover to cover.
Really?
No. I'm being
Really?
honest.
Nope. In 40 years of gaming, I've never made it from one cover to the other. No, I've read
Well,
everything.
you go to your
Between
room
those
and
covers.
do it.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
right.
You're not my
Son.
dad.
no. I'm going to say the same thing as like Eli said. Is whether people realize it or not is when you notice this whenever people talk about the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, and we all know Crafty Matt in there and how he goes. It's right there in the DMG. You can do it right here. There's the optional role, and people are like, oh, I didn't know. It's the same thing with the 1st edition. It was one of the greatest books never read. Everybody
This
goes,
giant
I
thing
have to
that's a
disagree
huge
with you.
essay on D&D.
Guys,
well,
you know what? People give that book, either a lot of love or a lot of hate, but the original DMG is a must-have in everybody's collection. There's some parts of it that are exactly, like you said, an essay. But if you really, look a little deeper than that, the first, I want to say like 50 pages, maybe not even that many pages, like 25 or 30 pages, are kind of, unorganized. But once you get to about page 101, when you start dealing with the castles and the henchmen, everything is perfectly organized exactly the way it should be, all the way to the end of the book. It's really,
Oh yeah, I wasn't digging on it at all. I
It-
mean,
it-
it-
it's a book.
I dig on it myself, but it's really like if you can make it through that one book one time all the way, you will find so many that even today there's stuff in that book that should be in other books and it's not. The random tables, the charts, the sound effects, the noises, the things you might find in a dungeon, making the whole at the end there's an appendix on making up like demons that you could easily use for any monster. It doesn't have to be a demon, but it's all everything you need.
they have
like
a random table of frogs in there.
I'm going to bring this other part up in there, which is, and this
really
is the problem that,
I
that
don't
a lot
remember
of,
that, but I wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Well,
Yeah,
It's
there's
got so much.
it's a perfect book for game design because people don't, when you begin to, if you read that and the Player's Handbook, you understand why rules are the way that they are. And I think that's one of the things that's missing from a lot of stuff.
It's really foundational writing on the hobby. And the one thing that this book has that no book really has anymore, and I know we're supposed to be talking about sci-fi, but
Well, I was about to say it's got a section on being compatible with Star Frontier, so there's our connection.
that is true.
And Boot Hill.
And Gamma World. The thing it does, though, that a lot of books don't do anymore is tell you. I mean, we all get the how.
Yeah.
But this tells you the why, and that's one thing that it actually gets into the whole why we do these things in the game, why this is written this way. I mean, it has a huge section just on probabilities. If you're coming to the game and you've into gaming and you're not a math guy and you want to get some wisdom on why the dice work the way they do and why different dice mechanics are being used, it's in there.
Yeah.
Why do we role play? Why are NPCs? It's all in there. So, I mean, if you ever have a chance to read this and you're a new player, it's probably worth flipping through.
And just like a quick aside, a World Wizards of the Coast product that went completely under the radar, but it is metal and it is really cool, is when they did a new Gamma World box set. And
yeah.
like nobody has almost nobody has heard of it, but and they did it with, like cardboard chits and that kind of stuff, but
The reason
they're
nobody's heard
nicely
of
done.
it is because it was built around the 4th edition engine.
Yeah, that's the only
Yeah,
problem.
But that might work for Gamma
have
World.
It
Yeah,
might work for Gamma
I've got
World.
every version of Gamma World. I've got the first 2 box sets. I've even got Gamma Knights, which is kind of a spin off, but what the hell? I didn't know it when I bought it.
But I think
Gamma
that
World.
product was really what solidified nobody is playing 4th edition. Like nobody, like this is not going the way that we expected. Everybody literally got all their 3rd edition books out, and then those Paizo guys got together and they were just like, hey, can we just spend, countless hours just writing stuff that isn't this 4th edition stuff?
Well, I think what happened Paizo so well was everyone liked their 3rd edition, and 4th edition felt more like a tactical board game.
Mhm.
Everyone's like, "Well, it's never." No, I'm. When I look at it, and you look at the little hexes and everything.
It's a miniatures game.
It's a miniature game, and it does fairly well for that. But the problem that I noticed when I bought like the year subscription or whatever it was, I looked at it and it was hard to go over. Like, well, how do you do role playing aspects? It was like missing the fundamental aspect of role playing. Now, since we're going to be talking sci-fi, let me show you some of the sci-fi games I have here. We got Alien, which is a fairly easy system. It's not too hard.
How thick is that book?
What's that?
How thick is that book? That looks pretty thick.
It is a very thick book, but if you get the star set, if you actually look at it, a lot of it is background. And
Well, I was going to say it's probably got a lot of fluff like the Games Workshop games.
Yeah,
books.
And lots of art, like big old pages of art too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and to be fair,
it's not crowded.
There's a lot of blank space in there, right. Relatively. Yeah. It's, but it also includes an adventure at the end. But this is the starter set is what I'd recommend anyone that wants to start Alien off at. This is more if you want to do a campaign.
I will say on the flip side of that, don't have anything to show for it because it's like a $5.99 PDF. If you want to dip a toe into science fiction, it's written as a humans only sci-fi game. Explorers. That's X-Plorers.
Only the one hyphen, otherwise you wouldn't look at it, right?
That is true.
Okay,
but Explorers, like I said, it's a $5.99 PDF. You can pick it up on drive-thru right now. I grabbed it ages ago. It's, I think, vaguely cobbled out of the old like white box D&D. Like every character, it's got like 4 core classes, and each of them has sort of a special ability, 10 levels. But it's got in there. It comes with rules on how to make alien creatures. It's got a space combat system, space chase system that is actually positional, where it's really easy to track. So if you're just trying to get into science fiction gaming, you cannot go wrong with $5.99 in a PDF. That's maybe 20, 30 pages.
I'm going to say another one. If you can go grab a bundle of holding or a humble bundle, sometimes they have fantastic deals for a lot of those. I like physical copies, but a lot of times I'll grab stuff out of there just to see how I like it because it's relatively cheap. But, I've got Mutant Year Zero, which is another free league system. This is more near science fiction, post-apocalyptic.
It's Gamma World. It's basically Gamma World.
Well, you know what? I've got that too.
From a European point of view.
I've got Dune. I'm not a big fan of how they're working it out, but to be fair, I've never played it, as you can tell by the shrink wrap.
I've only known one person my whole life that I would say is qualified enough to run Dune. Just in terms of like knowing the universe.
Well, that would probably be my mother. But she's the one that it. Well, there's John Carter of Mars, which I know. Shadow and I've never played it, so we don't know really how to feel about it. It's one of those like you want to love it, but you don't quite like it because the system's real. But this is something that's not too crunchy.
Is that printed landscape?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Well,
I hated that. God, don't even get me started. That book, I don't know about you guys, but I like to lay down and read a book, and this book gave me a freaking coronary. It's just
Well, the landscape books, when they're printed on that heavy bond paper too, they'll eventually disintegrate because all that weight on that really narrow spine section, they just start to peel out.
Well, I think this is well, and to be fair, Modifius and Free League have some of the better bindings.
The books are absolutely masterpieces, but that one. Go ahead, Gavin.
I was just gonna say I have a first printing of the 5th edition books, and the bindings are already coming apart. So that's where I'm just like, not only are they doing what they're doing, we don't have to talk about that because everybody on the internet's talked about it enough. Yeah. But their product is subpar.
Meanwhile, this thing fell into a muddy ditch and is still together.
You know what? My old player's handbook, my father had turned on the water, and because it was freezing in Kentucky, and the water started pouring down in the basement, and I found my player's handbook, and it was warped. Like severely warped, and it still survives better than most of the books nowadays. But
to answer James L. Cepheus engine.
You could go that route, but to be honest, if you get one of the original older travelers, even the new Mongoose Traveler, it's there's a lot of wasted space in the book. That's not all just pure text, because you got to have margins and things like that, and art and what have you. Traveler is really such a freaking simple system to begin with. Trying to simplify it anymore, I really don't think is necessary.
And Traveler has one of the best advancement systems in terms of you don't have to start at level 1 all the time in Traveler. It's you can make a character somewhere within their journey, and that's one of the best things about Cepheus and Traveler.
Right, literally you can roll up the Luke Skywalker farm boy, at 22 years old, or you can roll up the even 16 depending on which version, or you can roll up the 34-year-old hardened smuggler, or you can roll up the freaking 68-year-old Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you can all start the game at the same time. And there is no he's too powerful. No, it doesn't work that way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I will say science fiction, I've never really seen a lot of complaints about disparate power levels on characters in sci-fi games.
Yeah.
That seems to be a fantasy thing.
Well, I think the problem with the fantasy thing is it's a level thing.
Well, maybe Starfinder might be, akin to that, because you've got that.
And maybe it's just a newer thing, though, because old AD&D, your characters were really varied in level, because there's that thief, there's that thief who's zipping through levels, and
there's that too, the difference in XP.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring
Howdy,
this up.
Crafter, welcome to the show, and Cal, welcome to the show.
Anyone that likes, go ahead, for the craziness that's in there. Numenera, if you really want to go something completely crazy, the problem that I have with Numenera is it sometimes. But as far as the system, you got D20, and everything's really easy to learn. It's easy to make a character pretty quickly.
I like playing the game. It was good.
There's that one. Well, we'll see. I haven't played Mutant Chronicles. We'll have to, let Shadow bone up on that one.
40K
I've played some
ugly stepsister.
Well, you know what?
It's still a fun game.
I love it. It was actually at one point it had taken 25% of Games Workshop's market for 40K when it was back when it was a miniatures game.
Yep. Well, it still is. Believe it or not, Warzone is one of the most widely played war games, miniature games in Europe and everywhere else in the world. It is still so immensely popular. Yeah. And the new Siege of the Citadel Kickstarter that I finally received in the mail last year is a blast to play.
I know the original edition had me when I opened up the book, and it had stuff for letting me make my own troop types and characters. I'm like, okay.
Actually, I saw Modifius had those for sale with some of the Siege, the ones last month. They had them for sale. I don't know how much is left. Scum and Villainy, which is pretty easy, which is more of the Blades in the Dark style system. This one favors 3 different versions. If you want to do Star Wars, you can do that. If you want to do Firefly, you can do that. And if you want to do Cowboy Bebop, you can do that one pretty easily with this one.
Anything that really wants to follow kind of a tighter narrative thread, I think, is great for those systems like the Blades and just the Forged in the Dark. I guess is the unbranded one. But yeah,
the other one is Coriolis, which I have not read all the way through. I've just read bits and pieces. I know that Legion of Myth likes that one. If we're going to be talking Gamma World, I never bought Gamma World, but it was easy to get Dungeon Crawl Classics, and you can get the starter set from Goodman Games for like $35, and it includes dice. So this is a great deal for what you get for this. Now, I got it when it was hardback, but apparently they've done softback. But great deals for that if you want to go kind of that weird thing. And here's a game that I think is way too crunchy. And there are different versions, whether you play Space Marines or whatever. Is the good old Games Workshop like Dark Heresy and stuff.
Don't they have the new game Wrath and Glory or whatever it is?
Yeah, I'm sure they do because because
they
their
lost
Games
the license.
Workshop. Yeah, the Games Workshop, so they gotta do a little bit of different stuff in like every book, so you have to buy them all.
Oh no, the license lapsed.
Oh, okay.
So this was Fantasy Flight.
Yeah.
To be fair, but Cubicle 7 got it, and when I bought the bundle of holding, which had Death Watch and Rogue Trader in it, those were being sold by Cubicle 7. So I think. So
what happened to Wrath and Glory then? Because that was like.
No. They had the Wrath and Glory is their current one, but they had it on bundle of holding because they can still sell the old stuff.
Oh, okay.
Which is where the PDF. So that's
Wrath and Glory looked like it was a slightly less book intensive version of 40K.
It's a percentile system that makes you wish that you've been reading Games Workshop fluff for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Be able to play
I got no problem with that.
I
don't even play 40K games, but I love the lore and the universe.
Wait. Doesn't Wrath and Glory use D6s now rather than D10s?
I have not had a chance to play it, so.
Mm-hmm. So you giving us the guided tour of all those systems sort of made me think about giving new tips to new game masters is don't let the players bully you into adding things you don't understand or know.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Like, there's so many options out there, even for
that says it can do this.
Exactly. The book says it can do this. We should use it. And how many DMs will just roll over and go, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that sounds okay."
Expanding on that, you're going to run into players who are going to be like, "Oh, you want to play that genre? Well, instead of playing this game that you came to us ready to play, how about this one?" Game. No, we're playing this game. This is what I came to you ready to play.
Yeah.
No, we're going to play the game that we're prepped for.
Or flip it around. I'm like, you want to play that one? Cool. When we're done playing this one, you can run a game, and you can play that one.
Or the other option is, okay, you can give me the book, and usually it's like, no. Okay, well, if you're not giving me the book, then we can't run it.
No, you need to have a Zoolander style DM off, and then.
This is a perfect
improv showdown.
No, wait a minute. I forgot one more I had, which was, of course, Shadowrun. And that's the other thing is if you're going to do it is what kind of world do you want? As much as everyone loves cyberpunk, okay, that's great. But I hate saying this. I'd rather play with the if I'm going to play dystopian future, I'd rather have magic than not have magic.
And I'm the exact opposite. I don't get your magical chocolate into my hard gritty sci-fi peanut butter.
What about mutations though? What about mutations or psionics?
Not in cyberpunk. Well, actually, that's not true. My cyberpunk got a little weird.
Well, I just meant the funny thing is.
Wait till you see my episode of Gatekeepers this Wednesday, because this is the perfect segue into the last thing that I remember of my 10, 3, 4 commandments of game mastering. Know your players. Be able to read the room, and I'm not going to say tailor make your game to your players, but without players, you don't have a game. You're writing a novel that no one might ever read. Even your relatives, when you pass away, they're going to come across your crazy scribbled notes and go, "Oh my God, our son was the guy from the movie Seven. What the hell is all this? Jax what? I'm gonna drop this in your lap, Sean. What would you suggest for your GMs to understand about the players that he or she is inviting to the game table?
That no matter how much you think you know them, you don't know them.
Yeah.
That
They
is true.
save little
People
surprises for you.
change when they're playing a character.
People do
Yeah.
change. I mean, that's a
You
tricky
mean
one
murder
because
hobos? You mean your
Oh, no,
closet murder
you-
hobo friends?
You know, your friend who never says 2 words to you at work, half the time, could suddenly like be the actor at the table.
actor, yes.
Right.
And the guy who's always clowning it up, he could completely shut down at the gaming table because he feels way out of his he's just got analysis paralysis.
Yeah, you never know, and you have to be open as a DM or GM, I guess, whatever. You have to be open to sort of adapting. Because again, you never know what players are going to throw at you. Even if you think you know the person, you don't know what they're going to throw at you. So you're going to have your boundaries. I don't know if session zeros are controversial here. I'm not a big fan of them, but if you don't know the players, then it's a worthwhile thing to have that discussion.
Just wait until I put my little thing in. You'll completely. It'll turn what you're doing, their paradigm completely on its head.
I'm going to say this
I'll
much.
save that.
It's like Eli and I've talked. Everyone, when I was a kid, everyone had session zero. We just didn't call it that.
That's so many of the things that get that are all like hot takes and stuff like nowadays. Like even the concept of safety tools. I know that's a huge. We all had them. We just didn't call them that. We didn't have a list. They weren't in lights. But one of the biggest, session zeros was sitting there eating lunch with your buddy at school and going, I think I want to make a paladin next time. And he's like, all right, that sounds badass. I got this campaign in hell that would fit that perfectly. I'm like, I'm so there.
Well, you know what? I'm going to say this much. As kids, we also had, we had safety tools too. They were called fists. And if you went too far, the DM and the players would gang up on you.
So they talk about X cards nowadays. The X card back in the day was, dude, what was that? What are you doing?
What the hell, man?
Seriously, not cool.
Well, and the thing was, all of a sudden, all the players would leave and say, "Well, here's the important thing I think for anyone new, and this is the important part." Because I used to do this when I was younger. If the player just suddenly got fed up and started attacking the other players without reason, I'd just take his character sheet and say, "Okay, thanks, bye," and just pretend that he just disappeared. And I said, the biggest thing I think that modern DMs need to understand is you need to learn to set boundaries, and you need to be willing to say no. And then the other part is
you need to be willing to talk to people. Because that's so many. What do I do? You see these write-ins. What do I do with a player that's such a? Have you tried talking to him?
Well, people are so afraid of confrontation, and I think that's one thing as the DM, as much as, and I even say this is, I want to please my players, I do, but the other point is that if you're not going to make the game fun for me, and you're not going to make the game fun for other people, it's already dead. And there's a certain point where if you take the player aside, you warn them, if they want to continue, then you just kick them out, and that's going to be better for you and them. And people forget about that. It's like, well, I like to play. Well, you know what? It's hard when it's only 4, but you're in the modern era where you can go online and play games if you want.
It's hard when it's a friend. And
Well, again, talking about knowing your players, like I my first 5th edition campaign I ran was with guys from the office, and so we were all from that corporate office mentality, and I had one player who just kept, I've told this before on other streams and stuff, and talking to Omen, he just kept doing the same dumb thing over and over, and it wasn't a huge thing. Like, he just wanted to, like, when he had an idea to buy a piece of equipment, he would just write it down on a sheet. I'm like, no, dude, you're 5 days from the city, you don't have a tarp yet. He's like, I'm just gonna write it down. And he kept like talking over other players when they were doing their thing. That was his more egregious thing. And I actually put him on a corporate office style action plan. He had a verbal, he had a written, and he had a final. I'm like, dude, I finally had to talk to him out in the parking lot one night. I'm like, dude, this is your last chance. If you can't chill out, I'm gonna have to fire you from the game, basically.
What's really
and
interesting,
he came and he stopped.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, I was just gonna say, what's really interesting is when you realize that you are not only the manager of the world, you're a manager of a team, whether you think so or not. And some people are like, no, you should let players work that out. Have you ever seen four people try to order pizza? Let's not do that. Like
Yeah.
you do need to sometimes give a little bit more direction, and you need to, you're there to facilitate, to keep things going,
Yeah.
to keep keep fun rolling, and like dealing with a little bit of, like you said, it's like you're literally doing the work of a manager in a corporate setting sometimes. And yeah,
I did have to laugh though because one of my players in that game was my supervisor at work.
there you go.
So he got
mean,
the most
that
XP,
happened.
right?
That
Yeah.
is risky, man. That
Oh
is
no,
really
it's
risky.
funny. Is he had never played D&D, and I asked him, I'm like, okay, dude, what do you want to get out of this? He's like, it's Dungeons and Dragons. I want a dungeon and a dragon. And I'm like, and I felt so bad because the campaign world I had set up, one of the starting things was there are no more dragons. Like they'd all been hunted down by the previous empire and killed, and and then
But see,
so
that's where you get to, you have the little cutaway, and you have the little thing where you see a couple of eggs,
you
and
should
one of
have
them
seen
starts
his eyes
shaking.
light up when there was a
okay.
thunderstorm and he glimpsed something in the clouds, and
Yeah,
he was
there
the
you go.
only one on the tower that time, and he's like, dude, guys, I saw a dragon. And it's funny is because he has an English accent because he's from Birmingham, and and it was just like,
Alabama.
no. The same place Ozzy Osbourne's from.
Just play it.
No, but no, it was but again, knowing your players, it's like,
as everyone's arguing about pizza here, which I have to find funny. But the other thing is we've talked about all this stuff, but you're there to have fun. And if you aren't having fun or the players aren't having fun, go do something else.
Yeah.
As much as everyone talks about this, at the end of the day, this is why I like one shots initially. If you get burned out, it's interesting listening to all these people. This is my first burnout. The other, and I'm when I hear people like, oh, there aren't enough dungeon masters. Maybe I just play with a lot of type A personalities where we all want to play. We all want to be the GM at some point. So if we don't like something about campaign, like, let's try this. So let's try that. And, or there's some things in there, but yeah, at the end of the day, have fun, get people excited, put stuff out there, make it as easy on the players as you can. It's not any different than having your friends over that support one team in football and you support another. You're going to get some conflicts. It's the same thing. How would you, if you go into a Super Bowl party, don't make the D&D thing any that different for the most part. Well, I say Super Bowl. If you're going to have people over on the weekends to watch, a football game, treat it very similar in that aspect, except you're all together. Here's the other part too, and this is what I think too many people forget about. Role-playing games for the most part, and again, this is where critical breaks it because you've got, professional voice actors and everything else. And when I liked it when it was more natural, when you could feel that it was just organic. But your games are going to suck if you have to watch them as a third party. There's no matter whatever I see is every time I pop into Bruce Lombardo's games, I'm just like, look, I can't take more than 5 minutes of this. I'm going to go somewhere else. And yet everyone I talk to loves the game that they're in. So you have to understand that.
What about Rick's game? What about Rick's game?
I haven't seen Rick's game, but I'll be honest. Okay. I tried watching Shauner's one time. I couldn't do it. I'm just going to say, as an outsider, you're not really going to like watching most other people's games. If you're doing it, it's usually to learn a system or something. I'm not saying that there aren't some out there that are, but your game, don't expect your game to be like that. But the people involved in it are going to be involved enough that they're going to ignore all the dead time and everything else, and they're going to have fun. And that's the other part I want to say is, at the end of the day, sit down and talk to your players about what they liked and didn't like. I always like having my after action reports. What can I do better? What was good? What was bad? What's going through here? And figure out what they want, because a lot of players are really quiet and don't tell you, and they just won't show up again. And it's a lot easier saying, well, you know what? I didn't like how you did this. I would have preferred that. You know what? You're right. That would have gone a better way.
I've shared my horror story. The friendship that ended over my D&D campaign. That was some bullshit. Pardon my language.
But he wouldn't talk to you, and when he finally did, he blew up about it.
I was like, that was ridiculous. He, playing with him for years, he's like, you've never given me anything, and you've never given me anything to play off of in all the campaigns. I'm like, I've literally customized content for you, man. It's like,
yeah, it's rough.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I forgot to mention when I was talking about this part, like you guys talk about not having a session 0, and maybe like you said it's too structured, but I had a session -1. Like I would like talk to each of the players individually and see what they wanted.
I totally like that idea. As a matter of fact, I'm supposed to run a traveler game for Table Breakers in a couple of months, and with Connell was here. I'm not sure if he's still here, and Jade and Baron. We all had to like scramble to get our characters together, to the point where even though we played last week, my sheet's kind of done, but there's so much I don't know because we're playing Exalted. I never played it before,
Right.
and I've got massive amount of questions and things like that, trying to roll with it, so to speak. But I really do think that you really need to have like a one-on-one with each player at some point, even if it's only 5 minutes. Okay,
even if it's an email. Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be a face-to-face. Well, okay, how about this? These are people that I live with.
Okay, yeah.
In terms of like, like I was at high school with them all the time, so it's like you could do it in an email just like because that was just the communication. But I see the
I will throw out the caveat on that though, and that's the other, and this is something important to know. Session 0s and session -1s aren't for everyone. Some people don't need that. I have tried to run session 0s with my gaming group, and every time I'm like, so guys, should we talk about the campaign? And it's crickets. And it's and it's not that they don't have they just like they know me, they've played with me. And like if I say, hey, I'm gonna run a Call of Cthulhu game, then and I'm like we might do some session 0, like who are our characters, but I've not had a lot of luck with them because I mean, and where the reason I'm bringing it up is it's very possible that a new GM is going to bring up these ideas and these concepts that they've heard, and they're going to run into people who are maybe as new as they are and just don't know how to interface with that idea, or maybe they're long in the tooth gamers like me are like, what the hell is that?
Right.
I'm going to bring something up. It's because Eli and I talked about, you're talking to him. That is your session 0, whether you realize it or not.
And that's the thing.
It is, but I'm going to bring something up because I've heard you and a few other people talk about, for your Exalted game, and which is what I'm trying to bring up with a lot of people. If it's a new system that people aren't familiar with, you hand them pre-gens. Save them hours and hours of time. Okay.
Save yourself hours and hours of time.
Well, no. I mean, save them because I know that you guys, I was talking to Connell too, 4 to 6 hours to create characters. You're not familiar with the system. And I think that's kind of the weakness. You don't know how they interact. Guess what? And this is one of the reasons I say get the quick starts. They already have all of those interactions built in. You know what's going on. You know your role. That's why I believe in that you should have 6 or 8. Twice as many as whatever the players are, so they can go focus on what they like.
And to have backup in case they die.
Yeah.
Exalted's like playing Wikipedia because there's so many it's like the semantic game system or whatever. It's just like, man, I don't know how.
It came out in that same time frame around like 3rd edition and stuff where people were looking for a crunch.
Well, here's
thought they were.
Well, here's the problem that I have with it is that's great for a campaign where players are going to sit down and spend those hours.
Sure.
But they don't know the rule system for the most part. They don't know a lot of this other
stuff. Play it.
Exactly. So ease them into it. Good God, it's like lubricant. Don't go in for all the way, until you're sure that everyone's
right.
Anti-monetize.
The negative.
I was talking with someone. There's a lot of games out there, and I think the simpler the game. When we're talking about a new group, especially people who haven't played before, I really think it's a bad idea to bring them into the hobby with the crunchiest game you can find, as opposed, because whatever genre it is, we all probably started with a much rules lighter game when we started. None of us started with Exalted or Starfinder or something like that. We started in the same genre, but with something simpler. And as we grew, we're like, yeah, I'd like without knowing it, maybe something crunchier. I
Yeah.
went from AD&D to Palladium. Palladium was a lot crunchier. Palladium Fantasy, and everybody was like all excited about certain aspects of the rules. Instead of a 1 minute combat round, it's now 15 seconds, and we get more attacks and blah blah blah. And we were like loving
Right.
it. And then as time grew on, we're like, yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you know what
exactly.
I mean?
Okay.
Right.
To
Yeah.
give you an example, because we talked about how thick the Alien book was.
Oh yeah.
There's my
Exalted
Exalted
is
third
insane.
edition.
It's insane.
Yeah, there's no
Well,
reason to
let's
start a
also
new game.
remember that Alien includes two styles of play too. It's got
Right.
the
Yeah.
cinematic and the campaign. So
Right.
not only is it, it's
It's
thick,
two
but
game
it's because it's got
systems.
two game systems in it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the same mechanics and stuff, but
Well,
Right.
but see, that's one of the things. I'm not trying to knock you guys because I know that you do this for table breakers, but I thought that would be something that would help out. Like Shadow, if you're going to be doing Traveler, don't have them do all the other stuff. Just you make the pre-gens for them and say, okay, what do you want to
Oh,
play?
actually, I've got it even better. I don't know if you've watched when we did Jade's index card RPG.
Mhm.
I'm just going to convert their characters from that game
Yeah,
to Traveler for them. It's like, here, you're playing your same character from Jade's game, but these are the Traveler rules equivalent,
That's a
and
good
you're
way
good to go.
okay. Okay, so-
Because I liked playing in that game with Jade, and I liked the ship, and the characters were all fun. And I'm just going to take the old sheets and go, oh, okay, this, translates, and boom. And then I'll explain the rules to them, for those who have never played Traveler like Connell, and, go there, as opposed to, because I really thought about, let's, teach them by rolling up the character. I absolutely love the the life path systems in so many games where
Yes.
you learn about your character in couple of year increments so that you really can get into the character and you don't die in character
Yeah.
generation anymore, which was kind of the
Unfortunately.
dumbest idea ever. Other than that, that's all everybody says where you could die while rolling up your character. No, you can't anymore. Even back then, it was kind of optional, I think, but I
it was
I'm
in there,
digressing.
but a lot of people didn't just threw it out. Like,
So
you
I'm
didn't
going to
want
bring up. We're talking about this, but okay, this
Yeah,
is
we
the
saw
Alien
this.
starter set. Look, front page, which gives you your little thing, a couple of ideas in here. Here's your character sheet, which is real simple. And I'll say this much: character sheets are equivalent
Looks like a
to
dungeon
lethality.
map
What's
from
that?
here.
Looks like a
It looks
dungeon
like a
map.
dungeon map.
Yeah.
It looks like a dungeon
it
map.
does, but I mean, but
It's Dungeon
they're-
23.
well, they're 10 skills, and then there are 4 stats, which make it easy, and then tells you a few things. But I'm saying, the other part that comes down to it is, from a personal opinion, is the longer it takes to create a character, the longer they expect those characters to live. And for some of these, like if you look at the old basic D&D, what was it, 3d6?
Yeah.
That was it for stats.
You roll 3d6 for your stats, 3d6 for your money, and then whatever your hit points were, and that's all the rolls you do.
I'll say that here's the other part that comes down to it, and this is why I say you get the pre-gens, and this is why I like doing a lot of the quick starts. By God, the longest thing it's going to take you in a lot of games is equipping your character, and it's much better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
much
Every
better.
character. Go ahead, Alman.
Oh no! I'm just going to say is if you give pre-gens and you can put it in there, you can always tell players, oh, if you like a couple of items, let me know, and if they sound reasonable, I'll approve them, and that's I think a lot better than people. Like I'm just using it because I heard this for Exalted. My God, here you go, guys, and that's that's third edition, which is even thicker, but like the first and second edition. Here's a whole little book. Good luck. Figure out what's going on. I understand how everything interacts. Understand and I'll go. And players like,
Just like that.
Yeah,
That's an actual Exalted session.
and don't do that to them until they like the system. If they like the
Right.
system and they like the one shot, and like I said, with one shots, you can make it crazy. You can kill them off. They can realize how deadly it is. You don't feel bad if they die. It's a one shot. If they go out in a heroic way, those are the things
Take
that
care,
I
little
think.
brother.
I think that those are the way to go for it. But it makes it easy on both the DM and players. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about them pulling off weird things you didn't understand or how broken things are or stuff like that. It's very narrow. It's encapsulated. Those quick starts for whatever game you play are out there. That they've got. I think that they've become more and more standard for just about every system out there. I think very.
And
close.
the only other thing about -1 is that -1 is about themes and interests. So it's like so we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's like you kind of know where we're at in terms of maybe tech or a little bit of your fantasy ideas. Are there specific interests that you have in terms of what you want to do or what you want to see?
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
that's I get that feedback and just kind of see how it works in. Try
nobody
and
at the
work
table wants
stuff at different
Tolkien and you're
times.
running Tolkien, then
Yeah.
you're gonna have a miserable time.
Right. So
Right.
so -1 is kind of like setting the stage for them, and then
And what
then-
you've got to the original topic. You've got to know the players, and what better way to sucker them into the game? You know what I mean? By paying them a little bit of attention. To give them their moment in the sun, but find out what that moment in the sun would look like to them before you build it. If you've got a paladin, let's just use that. Well, you right off the bat, the quest for the holy sword is right there. That's that carrot you can easily dangle and go. Okay, they're good. You know what I mean?
Right.
But when it comes to like treasure, because let's face it, that's a huge draw to most people. They want to get that treasure, and for each
It's also
player,
a huge thing
treasure-
missing from sci-fi to put it back on theme. So
Well, that's what I was getting at. Is there's lots of ways you can give them ancient technology or
I
side
was going to say
crystals
in sci-fi, it's like it's a
nifty
little bit
gear.
more. Yeah, it's a little bit more like stuff instead of like things to look at or trophies.
that's why I was saying that that
well-
start going back. I'll go ahead and finish Shadow, and then I'll kind of touch on something I mentioned earlier in the stream.
Firefly's a perfect example. You guys remember Firefly, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
You remember the Lassiter.
Nobody will let me forget it.
The laser gun.
Okay.
The episode
Right.
with the laser.
The,
Yeah.
the greatest. I mean, think about it. That if you build up a technological gadget, it doesn't have to be what they think it is when they get it, but they finally got it. You know what I mean? You dangle that other carrot out. You're looking for this lost planet of the ancients, or you're looking for this lost technological item that this bounty hunter used to be famous for, or the secret behind this new tech or something like that. You can throw that out there because right, unobtainium. Give them those tangible physical as well as intangible rewards, but you got to kind of dangle them out there. There is no endorphin high from leveling up in most sci-fi games, so you've got to kind of use their own physiology against them and their own psychology to
Star
for
Wars
their
had
own
a great-
benefit.
The old D6 Star Wars had a great way of doing that. They had the smuggler archetype that flat out gives you a freighter, like a Millennium, Falcon level freighter right at the beginning, and then slaps 1,000 credits, 10,000 credit debt on it. So it balanced it out, but right off the bat, you guys have a ship, and you could go Han Solo your way all over the galaxy. What you don't want to do is what they do on the Volturnus adventure that Omanel was mentioning earlier for Star Frontiers, and that's let everybody gear up, and at the beginning of the adventure, everything you got is lost in the shuttle crash.
Right.
I'm going to be.
Yeah,
I think
I've seen that a couple of times recently, where the GM hands out something that he doesn't want them to have. Don't do that. If you don't want the players to have it, don't give it to them. Just say
Wait a minute.
it's not available.
I'm going to say this much. This is where I like the cipher system. Is you give ciphers, which are one-shot items. It doesn't matter how powerful they are, but guess what? They're one shot. You use them, they're gone, and players are expected to hold. And that's one of the things I like about the cipher system. I'm not a big fan of the D20. I like having more of a bell curve and some outliers and stuff. But when it comes to that, they are so far ahead. It's basically you give it something that says, oh, this can blow up like a 10 square block area. Well, guess what? It's only one use, and once it's gone, and you can determine what they get. And then that's one of the things that we're going to go through. The other part is, like Eli was talking about ships and everything. Guess what? A ship is its own character, and whether it's traveler or anything else.
You know what? It's also a character in vintage sci-fi RPG from Total Party Skills.
And
it's actually part of the mechanic.
The ship is a character.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, you're talking about like the ciphers being simple items. You can go ahead and throw in, like I was saying with Star Wars, don't be afraid to give them something big. Just have it have strings attached. If they get the most amazing object in the universe, well, then somebody's probably looking for it. And there's your whole campaign. In my 5th edition game, from day one of my players has had this wizard coin, and it gives them a luck ability. There are 5 other wizard coins out there, and somebody wants to get them all together. They've been walking around with this since 0 level, because we started a 0 level campaign, and they're now 8th level, and stuff's going on in the background. They don't know.
I'm going to say this much though: is this is the reason I like the ciphers. You don't have to worry about being overpowered. It's only going to work once. That's the great thing about it. Is as you get experience. We're talking for new GMs. New GMs, one-shot items are perfect, because if you screw it up and you give them an overpowered thing, you don't have to come back and nerf it or anything else. You're just like, okay, used it, it's gone. And we're talking about new GMs here. As you get more experience, you know what you can handle, and then you can give them artifacts and things. But the great thing about it
on that note, though, as a new GM, do not be afraid if you overpower or you build. What I guess what I was trying to say is, you can build things into it, so you can always correct. Is the other kind of on that related to that topic you're making? Yes, it's nice to have things that you can throw out that are easy and manage themselves, but you as the DM have all of the resources and all of the toys. Anything that you need to have happen in your campaign, you can make happen. So don't be afraid if you maybe go a little too far. If your players get that super thing up front, okay.
I'm going to bring this up though, and then we're talking about new GMs who probably want to mature them up a bit, and if you have mature players, especially if you have mature players that are former DMs or DM on the side, they'll sit back and like, yeah, I agree, that's overpowered, we should bring it down. But with a lot of players, no, you can't touch my whatever, because I know that Shadow and I talked about this one time about taking away magic items. And he says, no, he said players would rather die than actually give up some of their stuff. And I said,
well, maybe you need to kill the character.
Well, but that's why I'm saying.
You said character, right? You said character, right?
Yeah, character.
Not player.
Okay.
No, but I'm saying.
I heard player.
This is why sci-fi. This is why ciphers, I think, are really good for those beginning characters. They can see what's out there. That's
you mean players, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Characters. Well, the characters get the ciphers. But anyway, but as you're going through this whole thing, it's a lot easier to pull it back from that aspect. And I hate saying it, spaceships are pretty easy because everyone knows at some point it's probably going to get destroyed, or damaged or something. But
you've been listening to Sean again.
well, Sean would
actually, the recent Star Wars has even shown us that there are even more entertaining ways. Okay, you have docking fees that you need to pay, and until then, there's a boot on your ship.
and those are things that come into it. But I mean, like Rogue Trader has its own ship. The ship is its own character, and if you're going to be playing a longer campaign, Traveler does the same thing. Especially, I was looking at a few of them. I haven't looked at the High Guard. They would have
the Modiphius Star Trek game did that too. Where your ship was a character.
Do you guys remember the old show Andromeda, where the ship?
The ship was literally a character in that one.
Right. I mean, especially for the player who can't be there all the time, right. You could go, okay, you're playing the ship, and they're like, what? It's actually a kind of a neat idea. Even going back to Firefly, Joss Whedon said in an interview that the Firefly was like the 10th character or whatever in the show. even though it couldn't communicate or anything like that.
But
I
it
think
had
that's
idiosyncrasies and it caused problems and it drove plot, just like the Falcon does.
Yeah.
exactly.
So tell me one game that you can think of for space. Now we're going to say space. I'm not going to just include like Shadowrun and stuff, where the ship is not its own character that I can think of. Because you said Star Wars, Star Frontiers had its own.
Star Frontiers, they've never. Star Frontiers is weird because they have complex ship rules,
Sure,
but they really focus on the ships being pretty much a conveyance, and they don't spend a lot of time. They're very utilitarian.
Yeah,
Traveler. I mean, the way that I've seen Traveler ships, like statted out and things. I mean, they're a bit more like a vehicle than like something that has more character.
No. No. They have it where they're the clerk.
Are you talking about the Mongoose version there, Kevin? Because there are the quirks for ships, that you could easily expand. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe it's something I missed because I'm not a GM of that game yet. So
well, I'm just saying, but they do the same thing for Scum and Villainy. They do it
for Scum and Villainy. I mean, I'm guessing that the ship is a lot like the hideout in Blades in the Dark. That it does have a little bit of character.
It has some of that, but you also have different weapons you can put on it. You can put a few different things on there. And usually it's kind of like your hideout, but it's not quite, because you also usually go to starports and stuff. And but I mean, for games like that, that's the other part. Is it allows, and Rogue Trader actually does a really good job too. When you get like a best, when you get a best crafted star, last pistol or something. They start getting their own characters with it, and you're going, I don't want to lose it. And actually, John Carter, if you get if you spend 5 points, you're going to lose your weapon, but you'll always get it back at some point because you spent experience.
I love that idea. I really do, just because it keeps you from having to. A friend of mine used to complain how he'd get like a +1 sword, then he'd get a +3 sword. As he's going up levels, and by the time he got like the Holy Avenger or the really kick-ass sword, it was time to retire the character. He always would say, just give me the one sword. I'm always gonna just have my dad's sword or whatever, and let me just keep on and if I lose it, I got to go on a quest to get it back. That whole making it part of the character,
the
it's permanent kind of. Yeah, exactly. And sure, you got to drag the rest of the party members because someone stole your sword. But you know what? That gives you time to work on another, story arc or another idea as they're going along. Just consider it a side quest.
I don't know why a DM would ever not want to do that if a player really wanted it, because honestly, there's so much story that comes out of that. So your player has the family sword. Okay, what happens when the uncle that everybody thought was dead comes back looking for the family sword? It just builds plot and story. The jealous brother. Or what happens when the sword you're in the middle of the battle and you get that fumble and suddenly the pommel falls off and there's something in the sword. I mean, there's so many things you can pull off of that. Why would a DM not want that?
Here's the problem that I have with it is a lot of them don't.
No idea.
Earthdawn does a good job for it, but where you can imbue your weapons over time, and actually Exalted has some of that too, where you get I mean, to be fair, is if you create an artifact weapon under Exalted, you have gone through several adventures to get all the components, and then you go in there and then you start getting talents to build it up. I think that's one of those things that's one of the reasons I like the ship aspect is. Now, Traveler isn't always the perfect one for this, but I think that 40K does it a very good job. Is now I'm going to add this new weapon on here. I'm going to do this. Or I'm going to put in a library, and you sort of you're literally building up your ship to be what your ideal image of things are. It's not just you know what is. And the other part is, if we're going to do spaceships, and the great thing about having a ship, as for any new GM, is it gives them a home base. It gives them everything that they need, but they're not locked to a location. So now they can go from point A to point B. So if you don't like what's going on there, or the players don't, they hop in their ship and they go to a different planet. It's a whole new adventure, and that's one of the great things I think about sci-fi that's been missing for some. And again, I don't know about Starfinder, because apparently your ship levels up with you. I don't really like that. To me, it's a floating castle in space, and you know, just like when the old D&D. Oh, I'm going to build this. I'm going to put this. Now I'm going to put a dungeon on it. I'm going to do this, and you start.
Yeah, Titans of War, my setting, they're literally castles in space. Like they're what is it? It's kind of like a holdover from, you know, like feudalism, because they are like the place that you have to go to be able to go anywhere else. And just real quick for the since we're talking about like multi-session stuff for new GMs, if you're about to kind of like culminate on a big objective that's been building for like, you know, 4, 5, 6 sessions, you need to have something that's in the water already, that is like, now this is a bridge farther away than the big thing that you're coming up to, because unless you want to end the campaign, you don't want any like, you don't want to completely relieve and go into like an epilogue kind of situation, because you will literally like just kill the interest of that story. Now maybe that's what you want to do because you want to start another story or something like that, but just like, if you want to continue, make sure you have something on the horizon.
That's where great knowledge of episodic television comes into play.
Yeah.
We finally defeated the such and such. Wait, something just came out of warp.
Or something. Yeah.
I'm going to say the other part is do not be afraid to advance the timeline by months or years.
Oh yeah.
It's the other point that comes into it is, yeah, if you're going to talk about episodic, let's all talk about 24. Where one season, and that's how you think of your little mini campaign.
One day, yeah.
It's just a small contained aspect, and then you move forward by several months or a couple years, and now the players. One is, it doesn't feel as if your players are advancing as quickly as they are, because
sci-fi lends to that really well,
yes.
though. Because I mean, it's easy enough to sit there and say, well, you know, you defeated the criminal scum, and for the last 6 months you've been just doing odd jobs here and there, and yeah.
Well, I mean, it actually works with D&D, and 5e has that too. But I think that's one of the things is players expect it to be like day in and day out, and I'm going, no, actually, if you go
lucky in that regard, my players are like, oh, I'm going to spend the next month, you know, fixing up the inn in the home.
And they have the downtime system, but I know what you're talking about. Those like people are just like, okay, what are we doing tomorrow?
Especially with games that don't use like the experience points, where they feel like they've been cheated because you fast forwarded the story. Well, you didn't. You
were doing milk runs the whole time. You know, there's
you didn't have time to train or go up levels. You're doing regular crap. You know.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's not quote unquote adventuring, so you don't get the XP or whatever. It's just so much easier to in sci-fi to do exactly what Owen said. A couple of years passed by.
I was just gonna say that was probably one of my favorite things about that 5th edition brought in was the lifestyle and the downtime. Just like using that as different parts. Yeah. Because it comes pretty easy in that one, but yeah.
Well, I mean, this is one of the things I like kind of about the Conan system was it's kind of here roll a couple of things that happened since you last adventured, and and I wish they would do more of that with the sci-fi aspect. For that is very similar to what they do is like, okay, roll a couple dice, and this is what happens to your characters, and I know that the Blades in the Dark and stuff like that has some of that built in.
Blades in the Dark especially, because it's a huge part of like just going through the cycle of the story is like refreshing yourself by like what are you going to do between heists or whatever.
I have a random piece of advice for new GMs that's kind of genre specific, but it's always worked for me. If you are going to run a science fiction game that takes place in a rigid command structure, Colonial Marines, Starfleet,
Rogue Trader,
do not let one of the PCs be the captain. have an NPC captain. Not only
Especially if
do
they're
you,
new.
well,
Yeah.
newer, even with experienced gamers, it is it's a plot motivator because
Yeah.
the captain can sit there and say, "I need you to do this," but also, yeah, if you my experience with having a PC captain is you end up with one guy kind of running the show, one player running the show, and then everybody just sort of following it, and it breaks it kind of breaks the verisimilitude though if they're going, oh, I don't like Kyle's captain character, so I'm not going to do what he says. It's like, no, that doesn't work because that's you end up in the brig.
Yeah, I think I agree.
Yeah,
Like
you
if you're gonna,
definitely can't. You can't put
it,
one player in a position of authority over the rest of the party. You're just asking for just yeah to
On
just
the
help.
same token, make sure that when you are a new player, because we're talking to new GMs, but new players and new GMs, the conventions of your genre are very important. If you are playing, say, Starfleet again as an example, you're playing Star Trek, you're in a Starfleet crew, it is not going to happen that one of your characters shows up to the away mission with 3 phaser rifles, a suit of Starfleet body armor, and a riot shield. Even though that makes sense, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's like, I actually had that happen in a game. My engineer shows up with a whole bunch of extra weapons and stuff like that. I'm like, you can have a knife in your boot.
I'm going to bring up. No, I'm going to say that. I'm going to say the other thing though is you can look at it, and this is a bit different depending on how deeply you want to get into it. Is I have no problems saying, if as you go further along, having second and tertiary characters that are much lower rank that would be doing the stuff. Because let's be honest, we all laugh at it. Your captain is not going to go down into the the danger zone to go fight off whatever's there. Guess what?
That also addresses that too. If you have an NPC captain, then you don't have him going on.
Right.
Well, yeah, and the
Unless
other
you're
part,
playing Klingons, and then it makes sense.
well, and then the other part is that a lot of players don't want to also understands that just because you want to play a Babylon 5 style game and your players want to play a Star Wars style game, you're going to have to cater to your players. Otherwise, they will make it into whatever type of campaign they want or die trying.
You know what happens when you make a Star Trek game into the Star Wars style game? You get the Picard series.
yeah, you do.
He's finally getting onto a Starfleet ship, evidently, in the next season.
Well,
I haven't watched it, so
I gave up on Star Trek.
Well, I remember catching clips from the new show. I'm like, that's not Star Trek.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful.
That's scum and villainy in Star Trek, which would be I always wanted to run a free trader campaign in Star Trek because FOSSA had that cool supplement. I'm like, how cool would it be to be in the Star Trek universe but not tied to a government?
Well, better yet,
Interesting stories. For
mirror, mirror. If you're going to do Star Trek, do mirror, mirror.
I ran a Klingon campaign, which is pretty much the same way. Everybody kept trying to kill each other the whole time. I'm like, all right, well, there goes the campaign.
I don't know.
I'm going to ask you guys questions real fast for this. I know it's Shadow Show, but I'm going to ask you guys a quick one. Is if you had to recommend a system for a new GM that it would be player and GM friendly, for this is your first. Maybe you've played one other role-playing system, but you want a GM now and you want to do it in space. What would be your recommendation?
Any game system or what's currently available on the shelves right now?
I'm going to say this much. What is available enough, and because a lot of game shelves are not going to be out there, but if you can get a drive-through RPG and it's easy.
That's a pretty broad category because everything is on drive-through RPG.
I'm saying
that is a good tip, though, folks. As much as I may or may not like some of the things they've done in the past, they've got a lot of great stuff. I mean, if you're not a collector and you don't mind getting reprints and things like that, and you want a quality printed product or even just a PDF, drive through.
And you know the assumption is that you can print off a book, you can share a PDF in some ways. Or
Well,
people
if
can
that's the case, then Star Frontiers, because it's available for print on demand through drive-through.
I think Star Frontiers is an excellent one. But okay, so Shadow, what would you recommend? And we're going to say any of the games that you've played with that you think would be easy for a new GM
I'm
to pick up.
gonna go with the No Surprise Traveler. It lets you literally, not only can you run any and make up any character you could possibly imagine, but you could literally run any genre you can imagine with the same system.
So which
all you
version?
need to do. Oh, I'd go with Mongoose.
Okay.
Just because it's, I have every version of Traveler, like I said, except the GURPS version, and there's literally been almost no change in 90% of all of the editions. It's one of the mechanic. They may have tightened things up or loosened things up here a little bit here and there, but it's for me. I know Sean is going to say there's some things that are better about Mongoose because his name's in the book, but it's really the more I think about it, it's like I'd rather play Traveler than just about any game out there right now. Even if I wanted to play a Western, I'd go with Traveler. If I wanted to play Gamma World, I'd go with Traveler. I can do the work. If I need to create some rules and things like that, which, a lot of DMs like to do, a lot of DMs refuse to do, and just go out and keep buying more and more books. But with just the basic core book, I can do anything with it. And, it's just simple. Once you get certain things down, you don't have to read all the lore for their version of the galaxy. Just throw that crap out anyways. You're never going to use it. Or if you are, go buy, the other 20 books and you'll be happy. For me, I want to make my own universe anyways, but just, read through the first, character generation, all the basic mechanic rules and stuff. And for me, it's just, that's my go-to. How about you, Sean?
Well, sci-fi isn't really my thing.
Okay.
I haven't played a lot in 30 years. Like I used to dabble in the other systems, Shadowrun, Star Wars. I mean, I can't say it's a recommendation, but I wish I'd played more of the D6 Star Wars system from the 80s.
I can help with
good.
that.
Well, I wish I'd played more back in the day.
I will admit, thanks to Connell's show, my son and I and Omen, we reviewed Attack of the Clones, and watching it, it actually made me want to actually maybe, because I have all the original Star Wars books, the D6. I never got to play them, but I own them. If someone was running a Star Wars game right now, I'd be like, I'm in, So keep me in mind if you guys ever, go that route.
Anybody who knows me knows if I'm going to suggest a starter game for D&D or something like that, it'd be basic D&D or Old School Essentials.
Yeah.
And I think Old School Essentials was planning to do other genres. I think they've sort of abandoned that plan, but that was one of the reasons they did the books in modules the way they did, like separate books, so you could include different genres and just slide it into your collection.
Yeah, one of the carcass crawlers has rules for high-tech weapons.
High-tech weapons, yeah. So anyway,
so Kevin, what is your?
So I'm kind of digging through here, and I just wanted to see something really quick on one of these products, and then I'll be able to answer you.
Okay.
The last sci-fi game I ran was Rifts, and that was like 25 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And Rifts is one of those that I think is a better second or third game for people to pick up.
Yeah, I wouldn't have somebody start with it, or a starter player with an experienced DM. That'd be different, but
I'm going to say it's for myself. If you look at some of the things in there, depends on what you want. For the Traveler, to me, is an excellent game system. I love Star Frontiers, but again, it's kind of hard to find people that have heard of it or anything else. Alien is actually one of the few that have been able to get players like they're in like this. And it's got a great starter set for that aspect. But if you just want anything, I like Scum and Villainy. I do. You can play basically what everyone's familiar with very easily. The system's pretty easy. It's easy to understand the level up. It's it may be a little too freeform for some people, and that may be the bigger issue for it. But if it's a little too freeform, then definitely I think either a Traveler or a Star Frontiers. And the only problem I have with Traveler is it's so open, and that it sometimes makes it kind of hard without a really set universe that's well defined without buying other books. Though they do have the wiki pages to help. But there's that. So, Kevin, what were you looking at?
So what I was looking at is it's a fantasy product because I'm the only real like totally sci-fi products that I have are like some of the older like space combat games. But if I was going to recommend something for a very beginner, it would actually be Star Adventurer, and that's by Kazimierz Bansky, the RPG pundit.
Mm-hmm.
What was
I
it
think
called again?
that it's called Star Adventurer. So like I can write it down in the chat here for you.
No, I've been taking notes. No worries.
Star Adventurer, and I think it's really like it's kind of like a slimmed down, but in pundits kind of style of having some living history and having some like basically some really solid essentials. I think that it would be something, if it wasn't a starter set, that would probably be the closest to something I could recommend, because it's just something that I know a little bit about, and it's interesting. He wrote it basically as one of his RPG Pundit Presents, so it's much more than like just a single page RPG, but it's not super heavy.
Okay, so of the games that you like, but you would not recommend to a new player, what would you go through?
So for
or not a new GM.
Yeah, and I know what you're saying. Fantasy Flight Star Wars. I think that it is a system that works very well on virtual tabletop. Like there's a homebrew that was made by somebody to where it does the dice rolls great, and you can use your force points and all that kind of stuff. And I really think that system captures the cinematic nature of Star Wars, and like kind of like the high adventure, kind of, what would I say? Cinematic style. It's like but the big reason that I wouldn't recommend it to somebody new is because players do have some control of the narrative. And I think that's really good if you have a table, like you're a GM and it's a table full of GMs or very seasoned players, and that can be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it fell flat on my experienced group because we just weren't into the collaborative aspect of it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a acquired taste.
Yeah,
and I think it works very much better for kind of like the forged people than the kind of people that come from a much more like like a swords. This is a swords and wizardry box set. This is actually what I was playing around with, but it's fantasy. But it's basically what it is it is first edition, errated, has a lot of stuff in it that was from Dragon Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And even with all that, it's still pretty slim because they've been able to kind of like condense it. Now it doesn't have some of the whys like you were talking about. They like all Gary's stuff. They pretty much or whoever. I don't know if it was just Gary writing some of those parts of the book, but that stuff is out of this book. But this is for playing. And I think that it's straightforward, and the nice thing about it is it has like the whole package of the DM screen, but it's a DM screen that is not it's not really scary to somebody that's new, because the things that are on it, the tables are very manageable. and it's a good size for being portable. So that's another pro for this set.
So Eli, what would you not recommend for a beginning GM to try running for a sci-fi game?
Well, I mean, Rifts has already been mentioned, so I'll try and think of something else besides Rifts. I would say of the stuff I've had experience with, it's a great setting, lots of really cool ideas, but it's too much. Blue Planet.
Shadow, what would be yours?
That's easy. That would be Starfinder. It's just too much. That's really what I think everybody's sort of kind of touched upon at the very least. You can't start out with the entire Encyclopedia Britannica to get started. You need something simple, something easy, something you can fit into a backpack and not need wheels on the backpack. You know what I mean? Something
Yeah.
simple, something that isn't going to cost an arm and a leg. Because if you hate it, then you're stuck with a very big chunk of wood that you're probably going to be hanging on to for a long time. But then again, I don't recommend ever getting rid of any of your books because
No.
I've made that mistake and regretted it. Even the games I hate. There's one game two games actually. I was talking about space opera, and I talked about it 2 or 3 times today, all with different people. And I'm like, dang it! Now I wish I had it. I just sold it a while ago because I hated it. But you know what? I've had other games in my collection that I hated, and then I go back years later and go, what was I thinking? This is pretty good.
Yeah.
So never get rid of your books and never loan them to your friends because your friends only your friends steal your books. But Starfighter is just too much. It just the core rule book is just too much for any beginner. Later on it'll still be there. You can always go get it when you've gone up a level or two as a GM, but start with something simple and go from there.
Yeah, Blue Planet has that problem because Blue Planet is set at a moment in time in the universe. And like even the monster book, for example, it's done as like a naturalist guide because you're dealing with a very, I wouldn't call it hard science fiction, but harder science fiction with a very limited setting. I mean, humans have gotten to one other planet outside their solar system, and that's Poseidon. But like even the monster book, for example, has monsters written as what we know of them so far and leaves it up to the GM to fill in those blanks, which is cool, but it's not a rookie move.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
I'm gonna ask is Sean, do you have any? I know it's been a long time since you've.
Well, Shadow succeeded in his pickpockets role and stole mine. I was going to say Starfinder.
And sorry, I gotta
Okay,
tap
see.
out, guys, and it's been a great show.
You know what?
Have a good one.
Kevin, I hope to see you next week if you're not
Yeah, that'll be
busy.
great.
Because after this quick, we're all going to hit the road. I've got another show to do with my friend Nathan. Everybody out there, have a great weekend. Kevin, it was a joy to have you here tonight. Look forward to seeing you again, man.
Yep, we'll see you again.
And
Thank you.
keep up the good
Okay.
work offline.
Yeah, I'll be working on Titans of War. I'll be able to show more.
Sweet.
Good night.
Yeah, I picked up a Starfinder book to look at. I've never played it, so I can't really recommend or not recommend it. But I was just looking and going, what is this?
Well, we're talking for a new GM. It could be a great system. It's just if you it's just overwhelming, especially.
And if it overwhelms somebody with experience, it's like a new person might be like, holy crap. I was never a fan of Pathfinder either, so I might have been biased. But there you go. There's my non-answer for.
So I'm gonna, because everyone loves the lore, but my God, as I've been trying to go through it, because I was trying to get Saxius to run a game.
Rogue Trader.
Is any of the whether it's Rogue Trader, Dark Heresy, or a lot of these, there's so much background that you really need to understand for some of this to make it feel like it should. And odds are your players will know more than you do. which really will make it hard for you. But the rules get kind of complex for stuff, and you have to go through things, and I think it's a bit too much for a new GM. The artwork's great. It's not that I haven't really played, but I'm like, okay, the rules are there, but it gets really complex and convoluted, and you have to say no to certain cases, and then especially, who's going to be the leader if you're going to play Rogue Trader versus someone else, like you're saying with the captain. So there's that aspect. The other,
I will say one thing, a nice thing about playing in the 40K universe is just about everything that's ever been written for 40K is all considered unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
Because it's all somebody's story, somebody's recounting, and so like you can there's a lot of wiggle room in it, even though there's a mountain of lore. If you screw up, well, guess the administratum was wrong.
I'm going to say the other part is a game I do not like for their system. Well, there are a couple of them that take a lot of work, but you can go BattleTech. If you're going to play the Mech Warrior version, that one, I don't recommend that for a system. Shadowrun, well, I like some of the stuff that is in there. That's one of those that gets really complex and convoluted for any new players. So sometimes you're just like, look, keep it simple, stupid. And I'm going to bring up one other thing, which you haven't mentioned, but you were talking about creating it. How did you feel about the index card RPG there, Shadow?
You know what?
For running a sci-fi game.
It's a fun little system for a bunch of different genres. I'm also playing a spin-off Vigilante City. It's actually a really good system. It's for beginners. It's got all you need, simple rules, lots of intuitive mechanics, and simple to absorb and digest lore. For it's got a bunch of genres in it, and like if you can't make one of them work for your gaming table, I really don't know what you're doing with your life.
This was a great thing when he was talking about Star Frontiers. Nighthawks and Alpha Dawn, boom, you're done. That's all that you need. And
by the way, if you don't even necessarily want the Star Frontiers universe, you can pick up Frontier Space, which is a genericized sci-fi rules version of the Star Frontiers engine. So
right, and it's cheaper because Star Frontiers has got the the age on it, which makes it a collector's item. I've actually got two copies of the original box set.
But the original stuff is available for print on demand through drive-through.
Right.
Well, and I'm going to bring up the other point is for Traveler, the basic core system, you usually pick up a setting, which can get kind of expensive. But if you want to really expand it, that Traveler Companion or whatever it's called, where they add the morale and the wealth and the status and add a few other skills, that allows you to open up to all sorts of genres that allow you the feel of, if you want to play an alien game, I'll just add this over here. If I want to do this, I add this over here. And Traveler is really great. The problem that I've always had was until Mongoose came out with theirs, it had one of the most boring, bland covers ever, and the artwork never inspired me. And I said, I wasn't interested in picking it up. The Mongoose, I'm not saying that they have the best art, but the art is at least colorful now, where I don't feel like it's as bad.
Right. Like I said, it's the best version throughout the years. Although Mega Traveler, while it was broken because it was missing rules for a certain thing that made the game almost unplayable, it actually had a lot of nice, I like black and white art for some reason. We've talked about this before. I like the old Conan magazine, Savage Sword of Conan, and anybody who can make black and white artwork look good, I'm a huge fan. But it's for me, it's a no-brainer.
And Traveler's well supported. If we're talking about some of these, if you get Star Frontiers, what you get is what you get. And then you have to go out and look for third party.
Well, I mean, it is the D&D of sci-fi. So.
Well, no, that's Gamma World. Is the D&D.
No. I mean, like its position in its genre.
Yeah. Travelers. When you go through it, I had never picked it up. I read it last year. I have a couple of the PDFs. My favorite setting is 2300 because it's not the really high stuff. GURPS is not my thing. It takes too long to make characters. I don't like the character creation, and that's my biggest turnoff on GURPS.
And yet you're in a GURPS game.
Yeah, I know.
See, that's the kind of guy Owen is. Guys, I gotta hit the road. Went a little late, but all of you guys, if you guys aren't busy next week, you're more than welcome to come back.
Awesome.
I want to get Bo back in here. I was just chatting with him. His mic just wasn't working, but we'll figure that out. And that might leave a spot open for either my son or somebody else to pop in. And if you guys can't make it, let me know. You guys, I'll work you guys back into the show whenever you guys have the availability. Because this was a really good show tonight. I had a lot of fun. I hope everybody else out there in TV land did the same. We really appreciate you guys spending your time with us on a Saturday night. For some people, it's date night, and so I appreciate
what's a date?
It's a fruit.
I hate saying it. Even when I was dating around, I always wanted stuff in the middle of the day so we could play miniature golf and stuff.
I think I broke Shadow.
I'm like, no, I want my evenings free.
No, that was just funny as hell. So we're going to leave on a good note. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You made my day. Eli, anytime you want to come back, or if you want to, do something, just you and me, some day or night, let me know. I value your expertise, and I'm actually, well, no, I'm really impressed that, I know a lot of people that played and don't play anymore, started when I did and don't anymore. And anybody who loves this hobby as much as I do, as much as all of us do, regardless of the genre, regardless of the system or whatever, regardless of all the stuff that's going on in our lives, we can all come here, hang out, and talk about something that's near and dear to our heart.
Absolutely.
So everybody, have a great weekend. Enjoy next week as much as you can. If there's somebody special in your life, don't forget, that day's coming up, and
You mean half price chocolate day?
Right. Yeah, if you are an early bird and get there before 9 a.m. when other chocolate lovers are waiting in line, open, just for that.
Yeah.
All
right.
And Charlotte, I'm sorry you just came in at the tail end, but one of these days you're gonna have to come on the show. Or if I missed you, in the chat, I'm really sorry, and I'm really waiting to see those pictures of those minis we sent you painted up or at least assembled. Maybe we'll have a chat about that. But until next week, guys, have a great week.
Good night, everyone. Thanks, Shadow.
Night, folks. Thank
My
you.
pleasure, guys.
Night.
Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks, Shadow. Go ahead.
My pleasure. We're having a tough time getting the little guy. He's still been sick, and distracted and everything to watch Casablanca. I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully we'll get to it in the morning after church. But thanks for the recommendation, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, part of it was for me. I had to look. I have to get a palate cleanser after Star Wars.
Fair enough.
It's one of those that it looks so great, and it was one of those that just went, oh God, George Lucas, you just made it so much worse. You needed a good editor. You needed someone to rein you in and say, okay, we're going to, because it could have been such an amazing film. I think. I mean, he had all of the elements, and it's like the first one. I thought
for me, I mean, you and I, we've got that one extra special thing in common, being able to look at things through the eyes of our son, and sitting there with him, enjoying something that he, absolutely loves, even as much as he hated because he loved the last three movies, for a period of time, but then I watched him grow up, and now he doesn't even acknowledge their existence, but still being able to, connect, with that one, even though it's just 2 hours, it's always going to be special. You know what I'm talking about. You've got those moments with your son, and just treasure them, man.
Oh, I know.
Even if you don't want to, you know what I mean? If you look through their eyes, it's just magical.
Well, I think one major advantage I have is my son is nothing. Well, he is and he isn't, but he's so different, and some of it is him getting excited, which was the whole point. Yeah, I know we're still streaming, guys. I can see that. I don't know if Shadow's going to cut it off, but
Yeah,